Chapter 2056. Qin Feiyang, who had returned to his cave residence, took out the image crystal. Buzz. An old man appeared. Who else could it be but the deputy pavilion master? Qin Feiyang asked, "Senior, how is it?" "I've asked Miss Chiao. There are Wuji immortal fruit, azure dragon, black tortoise, and vermilion bird, but there is no white tiger," the deputy pavilion master said apologetically. Qin Feiyang was a little disappointed when he heard this. He asked, "How much Wuji immortal fruit and azure dragon are there?" "Young friend, please forgive me. I can't reveal the exact number. This is the rule of the treasure pavilion. I can only say that I can give you 30 Wuji immortal fruits. I can give you 20 drops of azure dragon and the other 2 divine beasts' blood." The deputy pavilion master smiled. "So much?" Qin Feiyang was surprised and asked, "Is it a total of 20 drops, or 20 drops each?" The deputy pavilion master said, "Of course it's 20 drops each." Qin Feiyang was secretly speechless. 20 drops as soon as he opened his mouth. This treasure pavilion was indeed rich. The deputy pavilion master said, "Although my treasure pavilion doesn't have white tiger's blood, I do have a way, but I don't know if you dare?" "Go ahead." Qin Feiyang's eyes lit up. The deputy pavilion master smiled meaningfully. "Feng Yuan has a divine beast white tiger by his side." "Feng Yuan?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. He didn't expect that this old thing had actually subdued a divine beast white tiger. However, if it were someone else, he would be confident. But this Feng Yuan, how could he be willing to give him the white tiger's blood? Not to mention giving it to him. Even if he spent a lot of money to buy it, he would definitely not sell it to him. The deputy pavilion master said, "May I ask, what do you want to do with the 4 divine beasts' blood and Wuji immortal fruit?" "It's nothing. I just want to do research." Qin Feiyang smiled. "Research?" The deputy pavilion master was surprised. This answer was really unexpected. Wait, the everlasting divine fruit was a medicinal ingredient. Could it be that this child wanted to research some kind of medicinal pill? "Little friend, do you still want the everlasting divine fruit and the blood essence of the azure dragon and the other 2 divine beasts?" The vice pavilion master asked. "Yes, of course." Qin Feiyang hurriedly nodded and said, "However, this junior only needs 20 infinite divine fruits. Can you calculate how many divine crystals it would cost?" "This price." The vice pavilion master pondered for a moment and smiled. "Why don't you talk to little Chiu directly? After all, I've been in seclusion for too long, and I don't know the current market situation." "That works too." Qin Feiyang nodded. The vice pavilion master laughed hoarsely. "Then this old man will let her go and prepare." "Thank you, senior." Qin Feiyang cupped his hands and smiled. "It's nothing." The deputy pavilion master waved his hand, and the shadow quickly dissipated. "Feng Yuan." Qin Feiyang also put away the image crystal and sat on a chair, his face full of worry. It was probably harder than ascending to the heavens to get the white tiger's essence blood from Feng Yuan. Might as well discuss with Mu Tianyang. Perhaps he will have a way. Qin Feiyang mumbled and took out the image crystal again. Buzz. Before long, Mu Tianyang's shadow appeared. Qin Feiyang said, "I've asked the people of the treasure pavilion. They have the infinite divine fruit, azure dragon, black tortoise, and vermilion bird essence blood, but they lack the white tiger essence blood." "Even the treasure pavilion doesn't have the white tiger essence blood?" Mu Tianyang raised his brows. "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded. "Who are you asking about? Is he reliable?" Mu Tianyang was suspicious. Qin Feiyang said, "I don't know much about this person, but I think he should be reliable." "Should be?" "Should be." Mu Tianyang was speechless. Qin Feiyang said, "However, although the treasure pavilion doesn't have it, I've found a way." "What way?" Mu Tianyang was suspicious. Qin Feiyang said, "Feng Yuan has a white tiger with him." Mu Tianyang was stunned. There were so many people in the Empyrean Palace. Why did it have to be this old thing? Qin Feiyang asked with a smile, "I can't think of a way at the moment, so I'm looking for you to discuss. Do you have any bad ideas?" "Bad ideas? Don't look down on me," Mu Tianyang said angrily. Qin Feiyang said helplessly, "If I look down on you, Why would I look for you? Mu Tianyang said. Then I don't like what you said. Okay, okay, okay. I apologize. I was wrong just now. I didn't choose my words carefully. Is that okay? Qin Feiyang was speechless. What a calculative person. Mu Tianyang rolled his eyes at him and said, This Feng Yuan, we definitely can't do anything. We can only let the great elder and Shangguan Fenglan come forward. Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. Do you think the two of them will help? If they don't help, then we won't go to the resource hall. Let's see what they can do. Mu Tianyang snorted coldly. Don't say angry words. If we don't go to the resource hall, how can we get the vein of soul? Qin Feiyang said. Headache. Mu Tianyang rubbed his forehead. Suddenly, his eyes flashed as he looked at Qin Feiyang and said, Why don't we kidnap Feng Zijuan? Kidnap Feng Zijuan? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Look, Feng Wenhai only has 2 sons. One is Gongzi Feng, the other is Feng Zijuan. But this Gongzi Feng, because of his birth, is not liked by the Feng family. Kidnapping him will not make much sense. But this Feng Zijuan is different. Whether it is Feng Yuan or Feng Wenhai, they both love him very much. If we kidnap him and threaten him, I think Feng Yuan, this old thing, will definitely obediently hand over the essence blood. Mu Tianyang laughed. It is indeed a bad idea. Qin Feiyang whispered, then frowned and asked suspiciously, How do you know that Gongzi Feng is not liked? Who do you think I am? Can you hide it from my eyes? I have investigated him long ago. Mu Tianyang said. Qin Feiyang said, Then you also know the relationship between Gongzi Feng and me? Not much, I know a little. Mu Tianyang laughed. Qin Feiyang pursed his lips and said, Looking at your face, I want to beat you up. I am your partner now. It is your loss to beat me up. Mu Tianyang looked at him proudly. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes, pondered for a moment, and nodded. Okay, we will kidnap Feng Zijuan. Wait. Don't talk about us. It is you who will kidnap him. I don't want to interfere in this matter. Mu Tianyang waved his hand. You want the 4 symbols infinite divine pill, but you don't want to kidnap Feng Zijuan. How can there be such a good thing in the world? Qin Feiyang sneered. Don't worry. I just said that I don't want to interfere. I didn't say that I will not interfere. Mu Tianyang said with a smile. Qin Feiyang was stunned. He looked at Mu Tianyang and said, From what you said, you want to take the opportunity to blackmail me? Don't forget, we are now grasshoppers on the same rope, tied together in life and death. Of course I didn't forget. But kidnapping Feng Zijuan is not a small matter, Mu Tianyang said with a smile. Qin Feiyang said impatiently, Don't beat around the bush. Just say what you want to say. Mu Tianyang stretched out 3 fingers and said, I want 3 4 symbols infinite divine pills. So many? Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. Is it a lot? Mu Tianyang asked. Qin Feiyang said angrily, Nonsense. I only planned for the 2 of us. Now you want 3. Where can I find them? Even my cooperation with Shangguanqiu was cut off by you. How can such a small matter be difficult for you? Mu Tianyang said with a smile. Qin Feiyang frowned. Mu Tianyang said helplessly, 3 is really not a lot. Don't be so stingy, okay? I am stingy? Qin Feiyang suddenly became angry. He suddenly raised his eyebrows and said, Why do you want 3? Isn't it just you and Mu Qing now? Mu Tianyang said jokingly, Have you forgotten your fiancé so quickly? Qin Feiyang's face darkened. He said in a low voice, You should know my ancestor's character. He would never make such a ridiculous marriage agreement. Of course I know. But Guosweki doesn't know. Until now, she still thinks that the marriage agreement is real. Mu Tianyang said with a smile, What's the point of doing this? You know my strength. With Guosweki's little tricks, she will never be able to threaten me. Qin Feiyang frowned. Not necessarily. Mu Tianyang smiled. Qin Feiyang was very angry. He said, Fine. I promise to give you 3 4 symbols infinite divine pills. But you have to promise me one thing? Say it. Mu Tianyang said. Qin Feiyang said in a low voice, When you get the white tiger blood essence, it will all belong to me. What do you want? Mu Tianyang was surprised. Don't worry about that. Qin Feiyong said. This, Mu Tianyang pondered for a while and nodded helplessly. Right now, only you can refine the four symbols infinite divine pills. I can't do anything without you. Deal. When do you want to act? There's no time to lose. Now, do you know Feng Zijuan's cave residence? Qin Feiyang asked. Yes. He is the inner sect's number 1 Sword Peak's number 10 cave residence, Mu Tianyang said. With his strength, he can enter the number 1 Sword Peak? Qin Feiyang was surprised. If you can enter the first sacred peak, what's so strange about him entering the number 1 Sword Peak? Mu Tianyang pouted. You're jealous. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes and said, now that Frenzy and Jin Yunchang have gone to the Red Gold Divine Tower and the Purple Gold Divine Tower, let's hurry and meet in the inner sect's Deacon Hall and kidnap Feng Zijuan before they come back. Okay. Mu Tianyang nodded. The two turned off the image crystal at the same time and left their respective cave residences. Qin Feiyang flew to Fire Lotus's side, looked up at the two divine towers, and asked, what's the situation? Frenzy went directly into the Red Gold Divine Tower. I wonder what's the situation inside? Fire Lotus shook her head. Qin Feiyang said, then don't look. Let's go and do something important. What is it? Fire Lotus was suspicious. Qin Feiyang leaned over to Fire Lotus's ear and whispered, kidnap Feng Zijuan? What? Fire Lotus exclaimed. Shuh. Qin Feiyang hurriedly made a shushing gesture. Fire Lotus nodded, looked around vigilantly, and said, why do you want to kidnap him? Of course there's a reason. You'll know later. A mysterious smile appeared on Qin Feiyang's face. Bringing the Fire Lotus with him, he returned to his cultivation dwelling, closed the door, and entered the Black Tortoise world. Controlling the Black Tortoise world, he left the cultivation dwelling without anyone noticing, flying toward the inner court Deacon Hall. Chapter 2057. Deacon Hall. A purple-clothed youth with his hands behind his back stood on the cliff on the left side of the Deacon Hall. His dark eyes were extremely deep. It was Mu Tianyang. After entering the ancient world, that innate emperor aura had been concealed by him. But even so, the aura he exuded could not be ignored. It was as if he was the son of a god. Suddenly, a powerless force descended. Mu Tianyang disappeared without a trace in an instant. Black Tortoise World, Medicine Field, Courtyard. Qin Feiyang and Fire Lotus stood side by side, while Mu Tianyang stood opposite them. Looking at this familiar land, Mu Tianyang was filled with emotions. Thinking back to when he was in the Black Tortoise World, too many things had happened that he could not forget. A moment later, Mu Tianyang retracted his gaze and looked at Qin Feiyang. To be honest, sometimes I am really jealous of you. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. What is there for me to be jealous of? Mu Tianyang said, Mu Tianyang, no matter if it is talent or talent, I am not inferior to you and Qin Batian. But why do the heavens always favor you? It is not that the heavens do not favor you, but because you did not cherish it. Thinking back to the past, as an emperor, you could get whatever you wanted. Who could compare to what you had at that time? But what about you? For your own selfish desires, you were cruel and heartless, harming the common people. If not for this, would my ancestor have rebelled against you? Would he have overthrown the heavenly Sun Empire? Don't always blame others. Reflect on yourself, Qin Feiyang said. You are becoming more and more like your ancestor. Even the tone of your voice is the same. All right, let's leave these things for later. Take care of the present first. During this period, have you found Qin Baishan's whereabouts? Mu Tianyang asked. I have asked many people, but no one knows. However, Madman did reveal a little. But what he revealed made me feel that something was wrong, Qin Feiyang said. Madman knows? Mu Tianyang was surprised. And not only does he know about my ancestor's situation, but he also knows my true identity. But for some reason, he actually helped me keep it a secret? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. What? Why are you so careless? Mu Tianyang's face turned pale. Qin Feiyang said helplessly, I'm already being very careful, okay? I don't even dare to fight with others. How did that madman know? Mu Tianyang was puzzled. When I sparred with him on Turtle King Island, I was accidentally injured by him. When he saw the purple gold dragon blood, he guessed my identity. Furthermore, he knows Lu Zhengyang, Qin Feiyang said. He also knows about Lu Zhengyang? Mu Tianyang raised his eyebrows. The ancestors' matter is getting more and more complicated. I have to be more careful in the future. How about this? If someone comes to find trouble with me in the future, will you help me? Qin Feiyang said. You wish. Mu Tianyang sneered and said impatiently, cut the crap. Hurry up and go to the 10th cave abode. Hearing the news about Lu Zhengyang, he couldn't help but feel irritated. Because the people he hated the most in his life were Qin Batian, Lu Zhengyang, and the demon ancestor. But after so many years, none of the three had died. And there was no doubt. Qin Batian and Lu Zhengyang were definitely stronger than him now, because the two had been cultivating in the ancient world for 10,000 years. And him? He was thinking of ways to remove the seal, take back his divine body, and repair his soul. His cultivation didn't improve at all. In other words, he had wasted 10,000 years of his life. So, the hatred in his heart could never be eliminated. The 10th cave abode was below the duty hall. Soon, Qin Feiyang controlled the Black Tortoise realm and came to the door of the 10th cave abode. The stone door was tightly shut. However, this couldn't stop the Black Tortoise realm, because as long as there was a small gap, the Black Tortoise realm could crawl in. The interior of the cave abode was much more spacious than the cave abode of the outer sect, but it was still a little worse than the cave abode of the Saint Peak. But Feng Zijuan's cave abode was quite luxurious. The ground and walls were inlaid with gorgeous jade, gems, and so on. In the cultivation room, a young man sat cross-legged on the ground, cultivating with his eyes closed. It was Feng Zijuan. Even if he was cultivating, there was a trace of hostility between his brows. Mu Tianyang smiled and said, not to mention anything else, this Feng Zijuan's strength is still quite strong. And Qin Feiyang nodded. Early Divine Lord, one level stronger than Yuan Bo and the Snow Python. If this kind of person was placed in the Forgotten Continent or the Great Qin Empire, he would definitely be a godlike existence, invincible. But in this ancient world, there was nothing strange about it. Qin Feiyang retracted his gaze and looked at Fire Lotus with a smile. Wait for us here? All right. Fire Lotus nodded. Qin Feiyang took out 2 illusory form pills. He took one himself and threw one to Mu Tianyang, instructing, when we go out later, directly cripple his qi. Mu Tianyang nodded, took the illusory form pill, and asked, where do you plan to place him? The Black Tortoise realm, Qin Feiyang said. The two of them disguised themselves as a burly man. Mu Tianyang then took out the blood blade. As if suddenly thinking of something, he raised his head and looked at Qin Feiyang, asking, Chang Shui, do you want to come back? No. Qin Feiyang shook his head. That's a pity. Chang Shui has been robbed, and the castle has been sealed. Now, other than the slaughter domain, you don't have any other trump cards. Mu Tianyang looked at him gloatingly. Qin Feiyang said indifferently, just the slaughter domain is enough to take your life. Haha, Mu Tianyang laughed. This, he did not dare to deny. He had witnessed the terror of the slaughter domain with his own eyes, but to open it, one had to pay a painful price. He believed that Qin Feiyang would not open it easily. After crippling his qi, immediately put away the blood blade, lest your identity is exposed. After all, during the assessment, Feng Yuan saw the blood blade. Qin Feiyang said. Mu Tianyang rubbed the blood blade and said jokingly, do you think he can go back alive this time? Qin Feiyang was surprised. Since he is an enemy, as long as there is a chance, I will immediately eliminate him. Killing intent flashed in Mu Tianyang's eyes. Qin Feiyang's pupil shrank, and he said with a smile, it is indeed in line with your character. Are you ready? Yes. Mu Tianyang nodded. Qin Feiyang took a deep breath, restrained his aura, and swept up Mu Tianyang, and appeared behind Feng Zijuan in an instant. Killing intent surged in Mu Tianyang's eyes, and he immediately waved the blood blade, piercing into Feng Zijuan's qi. Feng Zijuan immediately screamed. But at the same time, Qin Feiyang stepped forward and covered Feng Zijuan's mouth, and then immediately appeared in the black tortoise world again with Mu Tianyang. But this time, the place they appeared was not the herb field, but the depths of the desert of the departed spirit mountain. The whole process only took an instant, and Feng Zijuan became their captive. In the depths of the desert, the wind whistled, and yellow sand filled the sky. In the air above a sand dune, Mu Tianyang had already put away the blood blade. Qin Feiyang also let go, and Feng Zijuan, who was still in a daze, fell to the ground miserably, and his painful screams followed. Mu Tianyang looked at Feng Zijuan and said with disdain, "So easy. A new monarch god is not much. Look at how cocky you are. If it wasn't because he was not vigilant at all, how could he be taken away so easily?" Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes, because no one would have thought that someone would dare to commit murder in Nine Heaven Palace. Feng Zijuan was the same, and in the eyes of Nine Heaven Palace disciples, the cave was the safest place. So, as long as one was in the cave, they would not be vigilant. "Who are you? You dare to plot against me in Nine Heaven Palace. Did you eat the guts of a leopard?" Hearing the conversation between Qin Feiyang and Feng Zijuan's eyelids twitched, and he endured the pain and looked up at the two angrily. "That's right. We ate the guts of a leopard. What can you do? Call for help? Why don't you try? See if anyone will come to save you." Mu Tianyang smiled playfully. And Feng Zijuan's eyes were filled with bewilderment as he immediately scanned his surroundings. Where was this place? There was no desert in Nine Heaven Palace, right? Wait a minute. Could it be that this was a space divine object? Damn it. What are you doing? Do you know my identity? You are courting death. Feng Zijuan looked at Qin Feiyang and Feng Zijuan angrily. "Of course I know. You are Feng Yuan's grandson." Mu Tianyang laughed. "Since you know, you still dare to plot against me? I advise you to let me go immediately, or today will be the day of your death." Feng Zijuan laughed sinisterly. "You are still so arrogant. You are indeed a fool." Mu Tianyang shook his head and turned to look at Qin Feiyang and asked, "What's next?" Qin Feiyang smiled. "Of course it is to send a letter to Feng Yuan." Boom. Just as Qin Feiyang spoke, Feng Zijuan's eyes surged with killing intent, and a terrifying divine sense emerged, carrying a shocking killing intent, and rushed towards Qin Feiyang and Feng Zijuan. Courting death. Mu Tianyang's eyes flashed coldly, and he was about to take out his blood blade. "You don't have to do it." Qin Feiyang smiled faintly, and with a wave of his hand, the rule force fell from the sky and blasted towards the divine sense. Boom. Feng Zijuan suddenly held his head and screamed. What kind of power was this? It could actually shatter his divine sense? Amazing. Mu Tianyang looked at the power of laws. A hint of greed involuntarily flashed across his eyes. Although the Black Tortoise World's rule force was not comparable to the Miracle's rule force, according to his judgment, it could even pose a threat to a perfect Sir God. In other words, as long as it was in the Black Tortoise World, Qin Feiyang was an invincible existence. Of course, if he encountered someone strong, the rule force would naturally not be of much use. However, the Black Tortoise World was a true small world, and it would slowly grow with time. As the Black Tortoise World grew, the power of the rule force would gradually increase. When the Black Tortoise World became a large world like the ancient world, then the rule force would be unstoppable. Facing such a small world, who would not be tempted? However, Mu Tianyang also knew that it was basically impossible to take the Black Tortoise World from Qin Feiyang. He could only think about it. Chapter 2058. After shattering Feng Zijuan's divine sense, Qin Feiyang waved his hand again and the power of rules immediately turned into a cage, imprisoning Feng Zijuan. Immediately afterward, he stepped into the cage and took away Feng Zijuan's interspatial ring. Bastard! Give me back my interspatial ring. Feng Zijuan pounced on Qin Feiyang like a madman. How can I take back something that is already in my hands? Qin Feiyang sneered and the power of rules emerged, blocking in front of Feng Zijuan. Then he ignored Feng Zijuan and looked down. Damn it! He didn't know if he didn't see it, but he was shocked when he saw it. He even cursed. What's there? What's there? Mu Tianyang landed in front of the barrier and looked at Qin Feiyang excitedly. Qin Feiyang coughed and shook his head. Nothing? Mu Tianyang raised his eyebrows and said angrily, "Why are you so excited?" "It's really nothing, just a lot of herbs," Qin Feiyang said and put away the interspatial ring. "Bastard, are you going to take it all for yourself?" Mu Tianyang saw this and suddenly shouted angrily. Qin Feiyang said, "It's just some herbs. What are you going to do with it?" Mu Tianyang's veins were bulging and he said in a deep voice, "I don't believe there are only herbs. Show me the interspatial ring." "It's really nothing. Why don't you believe me? Can't there be more trust between people?" Qin Feiyang was helpless. "Who are you to Qin Feiyang? How can I believe you? Let me tell you, the things in his interspatial ring must be divided equally, or I will expose your identity later." Mu Tianyang snorted coldly. Qin Feiyang pursed his lips, took out the interspatial ring, and threw it to Mu Tianyang. Mu Tianyang grabbed the universe ring. He lowered his head and checked it for a while. Then, he chuckled. Immediately after, he raised his head and looked at Qin Feiyang, his eyes full of disdain. "I told you that you can't be trusted. You actually want to take all these soul stones for yourself. Not much. 50 or 60 million at most, not even 100 million. Qin Feiyang said, 50 to 60 million isn't a lot? Since you're so disdainful, why don't you give all these soul stones to me? Mu Tianyang said, "Don't even think about it." Equally, Qin Feiyang snorted coldly. 50 to 60 million gold coins would be 20 to 30 million gold coins, which was enough to nurture 2 perfect stage martial immortals. How could he give it all to Mu Tianyang? Wait, Gu Yong said before that Feng Yuan was bending the law for personal gain and embezzling a lot of money? This Feng Zijun is his grandson. He will definitely give him a powerful divine artifact to protect himself. Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered. He couldn't let Mu Tianyang know about this. Otherwise, he would definitely ask him to split the spoils. "Let's go." Qin Feiyang left the barrier and smiled at Mu Tianyang. Then, he appeared in the herb field with Mu Tianyang. "How was it?" Fire Lotus looked at the two of them and asked. Mu Tianyang chuckled and said, "Brother Qin and I went personally. Is there anything that we can't handle?" "Amazing." Fire Lotus gave him a thumbs up. Mu Tianyang waved his hand and Mu Qing appeared out of thin air. Then, he threw the universe ring to Mu Qing and said, "Count them and divide them into 2. "Okay." Mu Qing nodded respectfully. Qin Feiyang said, "Fire Lotus, go and help count them." "Understood." Fire Lotus giggled and walked towards Mu Qing. Mu Tianyang was speechless and said, "Brother Qin, do you have to be so careful?" Qin Feiyang said, "Who knows if Mu Qing will cheat? Is this what you mean by trust?" Mu Tianyang looked at him with disdain. "The point is, you don't trust me either. Don't say these useless things. Take out a brush and ink." Qin Feiyang said. Mu Tianyang waved his hand and a brush, ink, paper, and inkstone immediately appeared on the stone table in front of him. Qin Feiyang grabbed the brush and glanced at Mu Qing. He said, "I remember that your space divine item was smashed into pieces by the inner demons." Mu Tianyang said lightly, "Does the ancient world lack space divine items?" "Sure enough, you're going to kill and rob again. As an imperial emperor, don't you feel ashamed to do such things all day long?" Qin Feiyang looked at him with disdain. "I'm happy. What can you do? If there's a chance, I'll kill you and snatch the ancient castle." Mu Tianyang sneered. "Then you'll have to wait. Maybe one day, you'll really get the chance. By the way, there's something I haven't told you. I've brought the space-time gate with me." Qin Feiyang smiled mockingly. He reached out and pressed the paper on the table, writing rapidly. Looking at Mu Tianyang's expression, it was extremely interesting. The space-time gate, this was his divine item. Now that Qin Feiyang said it, it was obvious that he was deliberately angering him. "I've been wondering, where did you get the space-time gate and the pill suture back then? Is it related to the blood blade?" Qin Feiyang asked as he wrote. "The Sea of Reincarnation." Mu Tianyang said, "The Sea of Reincarnation?" Qin Feiyang was surprised. "Yes, this is something that happened a long time ago. At that time, the Tianyang Empire was still around. My brother Mu Tianjun, the demon ancestor, Lu Zhengyang, and Qin Batian were also there. At that time, we were just like you now, young and aggressive, not afraid of anything. I remember one morning, in the deepest part of the sea of reincarnation, a loud noise suddenly sounded and alarmed this continent. At that time, many people entered the sea of reincarnation to investigate, including the few of us. When we rushed there, we found that an ancient site had appeared. In the end, we found a total of 5 divine items in that ancient site. 2 of them were the space-time gate and the Pill Sutra, Mu Tianyang said. 5. Qin Feiyang was shocked and said, "What about the other 3? Mu Tianyang said, "Of the other 3 divine items, you've seen 2 of them. The first is the Lu family sky-stealing mirror." Sky-stealing mirror? Qin Feiyang was stunned. "You haven't seen it before?" Mu Tianyang was suspicious. Wait, I seem to have heard second grandpa and the others mention it before. Yes. When we came out of the divine site and were looking for the whereabouts of the demon ancestor, they mentioned something about the sky-stealing mirror. However, I didn't see it with my own eyes," Qin Feiyang said. This sky-stealing mirror is similar to Mu Qing's all-seeing eye. However, the sky-stealing mirror of the Lu family is not the real one, Mu Tianyang said. Not the real sky-stealing mirror? What does that mean? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. In other words, the sky-stealing mirror of the Lu family is the same as the space-time gate in Mu Qing's hands. It's an imitation. Some special places can't be peeped at, but the real sky-stealing mirror is omnipotent. No matter where you hide, you can find it. It's simply unbelievable, Mu Tianyang said. So that's how it is. No wonder the sky-stealing mirror couldn't find the whereabouts of the demon ancestor when he was hiding on the demonic Dragon Island. Qin Feiyang suddenly understood and asked, "Then who has the real sky-stealing mirror?" Mu Tianyang said, "Lu Zhengyang." Qin Feiyang nodded and said, "What about the other one?" Mu Tianyang said, "The other divine item is with you now." "With me?" Qin Feiyang was shocked. 3,000 incarnations. Mu Tianyang said, "What? 3,000 incarnations?" Qin Feiyang's face was blank. Mu Tianyang said, "Don't you think these 3,000 incarnations are terrifying?" "Of course," Qin Feiyang said without hesitation. He had 3,000 incarnations and naturally knew how terrifying they were. Just like the battle with the demon ancestor on the demonic Dragon Island. At that time, the demon ancestor activated 3,000 incarnations, and he had no power to fight back at all. If it weren't for the Eye of Heaven that could copy all attacks, he would have to open the slaughter domain to block it. Mu Tianyang said, "As for the last divine item, it's in the hands of your ancestor." "Actually, I don't know what it is." "How can you not know?" Qin Feiyang was surprised. "Because I've never seen him take it out." At that time, when we found these 5 divine items, they were all in a jade box. You also know that things in ancient ruins like this are definitely not ordinary, so it's impossible to take it all for yourself. After some discussion, we decided that no one is allowed to open the jade box. It's all up to your luck to choose one. I chose the alchemy scripture. My brother, Mu Tianjun, chose the gate of time and space. The demon ancestor and Lu Zhengyang chose the 3,000 incarnations and the sky-stealing mirror respectively. As for what your ancestor chose, I don't know. I'm afraid that even the demon ancestor and Lu Zhengyang don't know. Mu Tianyang said, "So that's how it is." Ancient ruins, Qin Feiyang murmured. He didn't expect that such a thing had happened in the sea of reincarnation before. Qin Feiyang asked suspiciously, "Then where did this ancient ruin come from?" "I don't know." After we left, the ancient ruin disappeared without a trace. And since then, it hasn't appeared again, Mu Tianyang said. "It's really amazing," Qin Feiyang murmured, and his hands stopped moving. He said with a smile, "It's done." Mu Tianyang took a closer look and was immediately amused. The words on it were crooked, as if they were written by a 5-year-old child. It was very ugly. This way, I don't have to worry that Feng Yuan will recognize my handwriting in the future, Qin Feiyang said with a smile. After all, he still had to work in the resource hall in the future, so writing was inevitable. If he didn't change his handwriting now, Feng Yuan would definitely be able to recognize it at a glance. You're a little smart. Mu Tianyang sneered. The general content of the paper was, Feng Zijuan is in our hands. Prepare 20 drops of white tiger blood essence and trade at the west gate of Sky Dragon City tonight. In addition, don't spread it, or we'll kill the hostage. 20 drops of white tiger blood essence? After reading it, Mu Tianyang couldn't help but be dazed. He originally thought that Qin Feiyang only wanted 5 or 10 drops at most, but he didn't expect him to have such a big appetite. He actually wanted 20 drops. We had an agreement just now. I'll give you 3-4 symbols infinite divine pills, and all the white tiger blood essence will belong to me, Qin Feiyang said. Mu Tianyang raised his head and looked at Qin Feiyang, a trace of a bitter smile on his face, and sighed. I've been tricked by you again. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and asked, do you know where the resource hall is? Yes. Mu Tianyang nodded. Then lead the way, send it to Feng Yuan, Qin Feiyang said with a smile. Chapter 2059. The resource hall was also between the inner and outer sect, not far from the battlefield. It was located at the peak of a giant mountain. Not long after, the Black Tortoise Realm descended above the resource hall. The resource hall had a total of 10 floors. It was a black hall that had been around for a long time, emitting an ancient aura. In front of the entrance of the resource hall, there was a square. The square covered an area of about half a mile. Disciples came and went, entering and exiting. There were outer sect disciples and outer sect disciples. Mu Tianyang said, according to what I know, Feng Yuan's resting room is on the 2nd floor. Qin Feiyang asked curiously, then what are the other floors for? The 1st floor is naturally the reception area. For example, accepting missions, exchanging medicinal herbs and soul stones are all on the 1st floor. And the 3rd to 10th floors are the resource hall storerooms. Mu Tianyang said, they're all storerooms? Qin Feiyang was shocked and said, the wealth of this resource hall is a bit terrifying. Of course, it can be said that if we obtain the treasures in this resource hall, we won't be able to spend it all in our lifetime. Mu Tianyang laughed. Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned and said, to be able to find out so much, you couldn't have been interested in the resource hall for a long time, right? Aren't you tempted? Mu Tianyang asked. Tempted? Qin Feiyang nodded and then laughed. But I still prefer the spirit vein. Haha. Actually, it's not just the upper floors. There are also storerooms under the resource hall. And it is said that the storerooms below are all filled with divine arts and artifacts. Mu Tianyang said. Amazing. Qin Feiyang was secretly speechless. This resource hall was simply an inexhaustible treasure. The Black Tortoise Realm sneaked into the resource hall without anyone noticing and quickly entered the 2nd floor. The 2nd floor was a spacious hall. At this moment, a red-haired old man was sitting alone on a chair. There was a hint of haggardness between his brows, as if he was resting with his eyes closed. It was Feng Yuan. Mu Tianyang snorted coldly and said, this old thing is quite comfortable. The affairs of the resource hall are basically handled by the people below. As the hall master, he naturally has nothing to do. But I'm guessing that he's thinking of something to plot against us again. Qin Feiyang smiled. Mu Tianyang said, if there is a chance, we must get rid of this person. Otherwise, there will be no end of trouble. Qin Feiyang nodded. Grandfather. Just as Qin Feiyang was about to send out the letter, a cry rang out. Following closely, a fat man with a big head and big ears ran up from downstairs and entered the hall. This was Feng Yuan's grandson, Jin Fatso. Is something the matter? Feng Yuan asked without opening his eyes. Jin Fatso said respectfully, the announcement has been posted. Even if Jiang Haoyan wants to come to the resource hall, he can't register. As expected, they're here for me. Qin Feiyang mumbled. And Feng Yuan nodded and asked, then how's your father's situation now? Jin Fatso sighed and said, what good can come out of following that lunatic? It's all this old man's fault. This old man shouldn't have let him target Jiang Haoyan. Feng Yuan blamed himself. No, this has nothing to do with grandfather. It's all Jiang Haoyan's fault. If there's a chance, I'll definitely make him pay the price. Jean Fatso said gloomily. Feng Yuan suddenly opened his eyes and looked at Jean Fatso. He said in a deep voice, "You'd better not find trouble with him." "Why? That's my father. Father is in such a state. As his son, how can I sit back and do nothing?" Jean Fatso said, "Zijuan, Zihan, one high, and your father fell into his hands one after another. Do you think with your little ability, you can be his opponent? If you go to him, you'll just be asking for humiliation," Feng Yuan said. Jean Fatso was a little unconvinced. Feng Yuan said, "All right, don't do anything for the time being. Wait for an opportunity." Wait for an opportunity? Jean Fatso was suspicious. Zhang Haoyan is arrogant and will make a mistake sooner or later. As long as he makes a mistake, this old man will be able to seize this opportunity to get rid of him. As for your father, it's only temporary. After all, with the lunatic's strength, it's impossible for him to stay in the inner sect forever. Sooner or later, he will enter the Divine Palace. Feng Yuan said. Divine Palace? That's not right, grandfather. With the lunatic's cultivation, shouldn't he have entered the Divine Palace long ago? Why is he still staying in the Ninth Heaven Palace? Jean Fatso was suspicious. He doesn't want to go. The Great Elder didn't force him, Feng Yuan said. Speaking of which, what is the relationship between the lunatic and the Great Elder? I have a feeling that the Great Elder is too protective of him. Jean Fatso frowned. This old man also doesn't understand. I also investigated their relationship, but there was no result. This old man estimates that in the entire Ninth Heaven Palace, only the two palace lords know about the relationship between the Great Elder and the lunatic. Feng Yuan sighed. Jean Fatso's eyes turned, and he said in a low voice, "There are rumors outside that the lunatic is the illegitimate son of the Great Elder. Could it be true?" "Don't talk nonsense. Do you know what the consequences will be if this sentence falls into the ears of the Great Elder? I'm afraid that even this old man can't protect you." Feng Yuan's expression changed as he shouted. When Jean Fatso heard this, his pupils shrank and his face was filled with panic. "Watch your mouth and leave." Feng Yuan waved his hand. "Grandson will take his leave." Jean Fatso bowed respectfully and turned to leave. Listening to Feng Yuan's words, the lunatic's cultivation seems to have surpassed a perfect divine lord. Inside the Black Tortoise world, Mu Tianyang retracted his gaze and looked at Qin Feiyang. Surpassed a perfect divine lord. No wonder he dares to be so presumptuous. But what I'm more curious about is, what is the relationship between the lunatic and the Great Elder? Even Feng Yuan doesn't know him. He's not an ordinary mystery. Qin Feiyang whispered. Could it really be the son of the Great Elder? Mu Tianyang was surprised. The son of the Great Elder. Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and shook his head. I don't think it's possible. Why do you say that? Mu Tianyang asked. The Great Elder has already lost a son. If he had another son, why would he hide it? Qin Feiyang said. Lost a son? Mu Tianyang was stunned and puzzled. Qin Feiyang thought for a while and said, There's no need to hide this matter from you. In fact, the Great Elder once had a son who was the previous resource hall master, but he is now dead and died in the hands of Feng Yuan. Mu Tianyang was stunned. This was really big news. Say, if the lunatic is really his son, why would he hide it? And I don't think it's his grandson. Qin Feiyang said. That's true. If it's his son or grandson, he'll be happy. Mu Tianyang nodded his head. I guess it's because the lunatic's identity is special, so the Great Elder hid his identity and took care of him. Qin Feiyang whispered. This Nine Heaven Palace is really an interesting place. Everyone has a little secret in their heart that they can't see the light of day. Mu Tianyang smiled. Who doesn't have a little secret? Aren't you the same? Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the letter he prepared before left the Black Tortoise world and landed on the ground in front of Feng Yuan. Looking at the letter that appeared out of nowhere, Feng Yuan's expression couldn't help but be stunned. He bent down and picked it up and opened it suspiciously. Boom! Immediately, a terrifying divine aura erupted like a volcano. What's going on? The disciples on the first floor of the resource hall and the square were all shocked as they looked up at the second floor. Grandfather, what's the matter? Jean Fatso immediately ran up and looked at Feng Yuan in shock. Feng Yuan was silent and his face was gloomy to the extreme. Jean Fatso looked at the letter in Feng Yuan's hand and carefully walked forward. When he looked down, his expression changed. How could this be? Someone actually kidnapped Feng Zijuan in the Nine Heavens Palace? Jean Fatso said in a deep voice, Grandfather, this must be done by the Nine Heavens Palace. Of course I know it's the Nine Heavens Palace. But who is it? Do you know? Feng Yuan said angrily. Jean Fatso shook his head. Feng Yuan's eyes flashed with killing intent and said, Go to Zijuan's cave and confirm it. Yes. Jean Fatso nodded his head and immediately turned to leave. Wait, don't make this matter public. When the disciples outside ask, just say that this old man was practicing a divine art and accidentally released his aura. Feng Yuan said. Why? It's such a big matter. It's better for us to let everyone know, especially the great elder and the others know. Jean Fatso was suspicious. Feng Yuan waved the letter and said angrily, Didn't you see it? Don't spread it, or they'll kill the hostage. They dare? Jean Fatso said in disdain. Feng Yuan was furious and shouted, They dare to kidnap Zijuan in the Nine Heavens Palace. What do you think they don't dare to do? Yes, yes, yes. Seeing Feng Yuan's anger getting bigger and bigger, Jean Fatso didn't dare to say anything more and turned to run out. What a pighead. Feng Yuan stared at Jean Fatso's back and then released his divine sense to cover the entire hall. No one? No spatial divine item? Then how did this letter get here? Feng Yuan frowned. In fact, Qin Feiyang and the others were still in the hall, but Feng Yuan's divine sense couldn't capture the black tortoise world. This move really worked. Mu Tianyang smiled. Qin Feiyang looked at him mockingly and said, How can your rotten idea not have any effect? You should thank me for this rotten idea. Otherwise, let's see how you can get the white tiger's essence blood. Mu Tianyang rolled his eyes. Yes, yes, yes. You're amazing. I admire you. Qin Feiyang chuckled. Then, he controlled the Black Tortoise realm and left the resource hall in an imposing manner. He's leaving just like that? Mu Tianyang was stunned. What's the point of staying here? Qin Feiyang was speechless. Since the letter had been delivered, of course he had to leave. And if nothing unexpected happened, Feng Yuan would send someone to the first St. Peak to find him. So he had to go back and make arrangements in advance. Not long after Qin Feiyang left, Jean Fatso rushed back. How is it? Feng Yuan hurriedly asked. I didn't see Zijuan, but there are some blood stains on the ground, Jean Fatso said in a deep voice. Damn it, damn it. Who is so daring to commit murder in the Nine Heavens Palace, kidnapping my grandson? Feng Yuan was furious. Jean Fatso thought for a while and said in surprise, Could it be Jiang Haoyin? Jiang Haoyin? Feng Yuan was stunned, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Go to the first St. Peak immediately and see if Jiang Haoyin is in the cave residence. If not, then it might be him. If he is, then he can't be ruled out. Think of a way to sound him out. Okay. Jean Fatso nodded and hurriedly left. Chapter 2060. The First Sacred Peak. Inside the first cave abode, Mu Tianyang sat on a chair in the living room, looking around and said enviously, Your cave abode is too big. It's useless. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. That's true. After all, you usually cultivate in the castle. Speaking of the castle, can you agree to a request of mine? Mu Tianyang looked at Qin Feiyang expectantly. What request? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Mu Tianyang smiled and said, Let me and Mu Qing also enter the castle to cultivate. Qin Feiyang was stunned and sneered. Don't even think about it. Don't be so heartless. If it weren't for the inner demons shattering my space divine object with a sword, would I be begging you now? Besides, we are now in a cooperative relationship, which means that we are partners. If Mu Qing and I become stronger, it will also be good for you. Mu Tianyang said, Don't. I can't afford to offend someone like you. Qin Feiyang quickly waved his hand. Letting these two people cultivate in the castle was simply inviting a wolf into the house. Besides, he and these two people were only cooperating temporarily. After all, they were still enemies. Sooner or later, they would fall out with each other. Therefore, it would never be possible for them to cultivate in the castle. So stingy. Mu Tianyang pursed his lips. Dong. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. So fast, Mu Tianyang looked at the stone door and muttered. Qin Feiyang smiled and gently waved his hand. The stone door quickly opened. A familiar figure suddenly appeared. Who else could it be but Jin Fatso? You seem to be Feng Yuan's grandson. The two looked at Jin Fatso and deliberately showed a trace of surprise. In the cave? Jin Fatso frowned imperceptibly and cupped his hands. I am Jin. I wonder if Brother Jiang would allow me to enter the cave for a chat? Of course. I can't wait to welcome Senior Brother Jin. Please, come in. Qin Feiyang got up to greet him. This is too enthusiastic. Jin Fatso muttered and strode into the cave. He looked at Mu Tianyang and smiled. Brother Mu is also here. I hope I didn't disturb the two of you. No. Brother Jiang and I are just sitting together, drinking tea, chatting, and reminiscing about old times. Mu Tianyang smiled. Jin Fatso said, So the two of you are really old friends. Brother Mu and I are indeed old friends, but we had a little conflict in the past, but it's fine now. Look, we are just like Brother Qin. Qin Feiyang walked beside Mu Tianyang, putting his arm around his shoulder and smiling. Mu Tianyang glanced at Qin Feiyang's arm on his shoulder and thought, Is there a need to do this? This was obviously done on purpose for Jin Fatso to see. Although they had reached a cooperation now, outsiders did not know their real relationship. And now, after Qin Feiyang made such a scene, it was undoubtedly equivalent to officially announcing that they were good friends, good brothers. In this way, in the future, when Feng Yuan attacked Qin Feiyang, he would definitely teach him a lesson too. Qin Feiyang laughed and ignored Mu Tianyang. He looked at Fatso Jin and asked, Senior Brother Jin, isn't the resource hall busy? Of course, Jin Fatso said. Since you are busy, why do you have time to come to us? Don't tell me you are here to settle accounts with us? Qin Feiyang was surprised. Settle accounts? Jin Fatso was slightly taken aback. He looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously and said, Where did this come from? In the morning, your father, Sai. I am really sorry about this matter. I asked Senior Brother Feng Zi to come over purely to help me out, so that the disciples of the 10 sacred peaks would not make things difficult for me. But I didn't expect that in the end, it would actually involve your father and even implicate him, causing him to receive such a serious punishment. To be honest, I really feel sorry in my heart. Qin Feiyang blamed himself. So you were talking about my father's matter. Jin Fatso suddenly smiled and waved his hand. I can't blame you for this matter. It is indeed my father's lack of consideration. Otherwise, how could there be so many things? Thank you for your understanding, Brother Jin. Qin Feiyang cupped his hands. You are welcome. Jin Fatso waved his hand repeatedly and glanced at the cave abode. He asked with a smile, Brother Jiang, Brother Mu, have the two of you been in the cave abode all this time? Of course. We have been drinking tea and chatting. Why do you ask, Senior Brother Jin? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Nothing. Hasn't there been a lot of friction between our Feng family and you recently? So I thought of coming to apologize, and I hope that Brother Jiang can let bygones be bygones and turn from enemies to friends. Jin Fatso smiled. No. I, Jiang Haoyan, may not be strong, but I am magnanimous. Besides, I am also in the wrong. Just like the conflict with Senior Brother Feng Zijuan in the Treasure Pavilion. In fact, thinking about it, I was too impulsive at that time. If I could endure it, then all these things wouldn't have happened. To be honest, I have always wanted to find Senior Brother Feng Zijuan and reconcile this matter, but I have been too busy recently and can't find the time. And I am also worried that Senior Brother Feng Zijuan may not forgive me. Qin Feiyang sighed. It's a small matter. Another day, I will treat all of you to a few drinks at the Jade Zither house. Let's laugh and forget about our enmity. Jin Fatso smiled. Thank you, senior brother Jean. Qin Feiyong hurriedly cupped his hands and thanked him. It's fine, it's fine. All right then, you guys continue chatting. I will go back to the resource hall first. Jean Fatso got up and smiled. I will send you off. Qin Feiyong also got up. No need, no need. You guys continue chatting. Jan Fatso waved his hand, then turned around and strode away with a smile. This Fatso is quite tactful. If Feng Zijuan could be like him, how would he end up like this? Mu Tianyang secretly smiled. Qin Feiyong said, haven't you heard of this saying? Every Fatso has potential. After Jean Fatso left, Qin Feiyong waved his hand and closed the cave-dwelling stone door. Then, he led Mu Tianyang into the Black Tortoise world. Qin Feiyong looked at Fire Lotus and asked with a smile, how was it? Did you split it? Yes. Fire Lotus nodded and smiled. Mu Qing and I each got more than 25 million soul stones, more than 100 million divine crystals, and many herbs and elixirs. With that, Fire Lotus handed the interspatial ring in her hand to Qin Feiyong. This interspatial ring naturally belonged to Feng Zijuan. Mu Qing also handed an interspatial bag to Mu Tianyang. Mu Tianyang glanced at it for a moment before putting it away. He then looked at Qin Feiyong and laughed heartily. This can be considered a victory at the start of the battle. It is indeed a good sign. Qin Feiyong nodded and handed the interspatial ring to Fire Lotus, saying, this interspatial ring should be useful. Go to the castle and take out everything inside. Okay. Fire Lotus nodded. Time flew by. Night fell and evening approached. Mu Tianyang and Mu Qing stayed in Qin Feiyong's cave dwelling and did not leave. Because they were worried that Qin Feiyong would play tricks, they stayed in the cave dwelling and waited until they got the 4 symbols infinite divine pills before leaving. Qin Feiyong didn't mind either. He continued to chat with her. Buzz. Suddenly, Mu Qing's image crystal rang. Mu Qing was slightly stunned. She took out the image crystal and a trace of suspicion flashed through her eyes. Who is it? Mu Tianyang asked. I seem to have established a contract bridge with Guosweki and Shangguanqiu in the ancient world. Mu Qing thought. Guosweki is cultivating in the space divine item. That should be Shangguanqiu. Why is she looking for you now? Mu Tianyang frowned. Qin Feiyong also looked at Mu Qing in confusion. I don't know either. Mu Qing shook her head. Mu Tianyang said, put it through and see what she wants. Mu Qing glanced at Qin Feiyong and said, don't we need to leave? Mu Tianyang said lightly, why should we leave now? Yes. Mu Qing nodded and activated the image crystal. A graceful figure suddenly appeared. It was Shangguanqiu. Shangguanqiu was slightly stunned when she saw Qin Feiyong and Mu Tianyang sitting together. What's the matter? Mu Qing looked at Shangguanqiu and asked with a straight face, what do you mean by this? Not long ago, you were fighting to the death. Now you're sitting together drinking tea? Shangguanqiu asked instead of answering. Her eyebrows were tightly knitted together. The relationship between these few people was really hard to fathom. Qin Feiyong said with a smile, no discord, no concord. Don't take me for a fool. Your relationship is definitely not that simple. But it's good. I'm looking for you too. Shangguanqiu looked at Qin Feiyong and Mu Tianyang and said, looking for us too? Qin Feiyong and Mu Tianyang looked at each other in surprise. Shangguanqiu said, I've booked a room in Yulan Tower and would like to invite you two to a banquet. Invite us to a banquet? Qin Feiyong and Shangguanqiu looked at each other. What was this woman up to? Mu Tianyang said, don't tell me it's a banquet at Hongmin? Shangguanqiu said jokingly, if it's a banquet at Hongmin, would you dare to come? What a joke. Why wouldn't we dare when someone invites us to a banquet? Brother Jiang, don't you think so? Mu Tianyang said with a smile. But Qin Feiyong didn't answer. He looked at Shangguanqiu and asked, when? Now. Shangguanqiu said, now. Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed. He nodded and said with a smile, okay, let's go. Shangguanqiu didn't expect them to agree so easily. She was stunned for a moment and said with a smile, then I'll wait for you two at Yulan Tower. See you there. Qin Feiyong nodded and smiled. Chapter 2061. After Shang Wanqiu's image disappeared, Mu Qing put away the image crystal and looked at Qin Feiyang and Mu Tianyang. She frowned and said, "Why did you agree? Aren't we going to trade with Feng Yuan tonight?" "We agreed to Shang Wanqiu's invitation because we're going to trade with Feng Yuan," Qin Feiyang said. "That's right." Mu Tianyang nodded. "What do you mean?" Mu Qing was puzzled. Mu Tianyang asked, "Answer me first. Where is the place where we're going to trade with Feng Yuan?" "Outside the west gate of Sky Dragon City," Mu Qing said. "That's right. To trade with Feng Yuan, we have to leave Ninth Heaven Palace. And to leave Ninth Heaven Palace, we have to go through the Stairway to Heaven. But the Stairway to Heaven has the ability to distinguish the real from the fake. We can't use the Space Divine item or the Black Tortoise Realm. Then, people will know that we've left Ninth Heaven Palace. At that time, Feng Yuan will naturally suspect us. Although we can find an excuse, it will be hard to get rid of suspicion. But it's different now. We left Ninth Heaven Palace because of Shang Wanqiu's invitation. With Shang Wanqiu's help, even if Feng Yuan suspects us, he won't dare to do anything to us." Mu Tianyang smiled. "I see." Mu Qing was enlightened. Qin Feiyang got up and said with a smile, "Shang Wanqiu is not an ordinary person. We can't let her wait for too long." "That's right." Mu Tianyang nodded and looked at Mu Qing. "You don't have to participate in what's going to happen next."
Yes.
Mu Qing nodded respectfully. Mu Tianyang waved his hand and sent Mu Qing into the Space Divine item. Then, like Qin Feiyang, he left the cave abode and flew toward the Stairway to Heaven. Resource Hall. Feng Yuan sat on a chair, holding a jade bottle in his hand. His face was gloomy. Dada. Following a series of hurried footsteps, Jane Fatso ran in and reported respectfully, "Grandfather, I just received news that Zhang Haoyan and Mu Tianyang have left Nine Heavens Palace." Killing intent flashed in Feng Yuan's eyes as he said in a deep voice, "Of all the times to leave, they just had to leave now. Could it be that they really kidnapped Zijuan?" "I think it's possible." Jean Fatso nodded. "If it really is them, then they will definitely go to Sky Dragon City. Send a message to your uncle right now. Tell him to immediately arrange some people to guard the 4 city gates. You must keep a close eye on them for me." Feng Yuan said. "Yes." Jean Fatso replied respectfully. The so-called uncle was naturally Feng Wanhai. Outside the northern city gate, 2 young men wearing the robes of the Nine Heavens Palace walked towards the city gate while talking and laughing. They were Qin Feiyang and Mu Tianyang. Mu Tianyang transmitted his voice with a smile. "Do you think that Feng Yuan knows that we have already left Nine Heavens Palace? Since Jean Fatso came to find us during the day, it definitely means that he is already suspicious of us. Naturally, he will send people to secretly monitor us. I'm afraid that the moment we left the cave, he already received the news. Right now, there might already be people waiting for us at the city gate," Qin Feiyang said as he scanned the crowd at the city gate. It was now evening. There were many people entering and leaving the city. Therefore, if they were to seriously look for them, they would definitely not be able to find them. They could only wait for the other party to appear. While they were talking, the 2 arrived at the city gate. Entering and exiting the city gate had to be checked. However, when Qin Feiyang and Chu Yunxing arrived before the city gate, when the guards saw the flame pattern on their clothes, they did not dare to stop them in the slightest. They hurriedly stepped aside and respectfully watched the 2 of them enter the city. This was the treatment of the disciples of Nine Heavens Palace. After the 2 entered the city, they carefully paid attention to their backs. Soon, they found a suspicious person. It was a middle-aged man in black with the cultivation of a perfect war god. He looked like he was leisurely shopping, but he kept a distance and followed behind them. As expected, we are already being watched. Mu Tianyang shook his head. "I was afraid that Feng Yuan would not send anyone." Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and asked, "Do you know where Yulan Restaurant is?" "Of course I do. The boss behind Yulan Restaurant is none other than Shang Wanqiu. It's not far from the Treasure Pavilion." Mu Tianyang smiled. "Shang Wanqiu?" Qin Feiyang's mouth twitched and said speechlessly, "Feng Zihan opened Yuqin Restaurant, and Shang Wanqiu also opened Yulan Restaurant. Are these women bored out of their minds?" "You don't understand. Although Yuqin Restaurant and Yulon Restaurant are opened by them, they basically let their subordinates take care of them. And a restaurant like this makes a lot of money, Wang Yao said. Especially the two of them. One is the #1 person on the Heaven leaderboard of Empyrean Palace. The other is the manager of the Northern Region General Pavilion, and they both have powerful forces behind them. They are also beautiful. So many people will give them face and go to their restaurant to spend money. This is the way to make money, Mu Tianyang said. Money, Qin Feiyang murmured and sighed. It seems that no matter who it is, they can't escape the fate of being bound by money. Of course. What does it cost money to do now? Mu Tianyang said. Gradually, the sky had completely darkened. A waning moon slowly rose. At this time, Sky Dragon City was the most lively. After a busy day, it was natural to relax at night. Some drank and some had fun. Many disciples of Empyrean Palace could even be seen on the streets. Men and women were in pairs. It was a peaceful scene. Yulon Restaurant. It was already crowded, and the laughter could be heard from afar. Young Master Jiang, young Master Mu. The restaurant master has been waiting on the top floor for a long time. When Qin Feiyang and Mu Tianyang walked to the door, a young woman wearing a long dress with the words Yulon Restaurant immediately came up to them. Lead the way, Qin Feiyang said with a smile. Please. The woman extended her hand and spoke respectfully. Then, she walked in front and brought Qin Feiyang and Chu Feng to the top floor. Yulon Restaurant had a total of 10 floors. Except for the hall below, the other floors were all private rooms. Look, isn't that Jiang Haoyan and Mu Tianyang? They came here to have fun too? Wait, something's not right. They are going to the top floor. What's going on? The top floor is where Shang Guanqiu entertains his guests. Did Shang Guanqiu invite them? In the hall, there were also many disciples of Nine Heavens Palace. When they recognized Qin Feiyang and Mu Tianyang, they immediately whispered to each other. As for the black-clothed middle-aged man who had been following behind Qin Feiyang and the other man, he stopped at the entrance. He looked at Qin Feiyang and the other man and frowned. Then, he retreated into a dark alleyway on the other side. What? They went to Yulon Restaurant? Or Shang Guanqiu invited them? Soon, Feng Yuan received a message from Feng Wenhai. It's true. It doesn't seem to be them, Feng Wenhai said. If it's not them, who could it be? Among the disciples of Nine Heavens Palace, besides Lunatic, it seems that only they have the guts. Feng Yuan frowned. Could it be Lunatic? Feng Wenhai asked. Impossible. We have no grudges with Lunatic. Why would he kidnap Zijuan? Besides, Lunatic doesn't need the White Tiger Essence blood. Feng Yuan said. What should we do now? Feng Wenhai was worried. Don't worry. I'll definitely save Zijuan. Continue to keep an eye on Yulon Restaurant. I have a feeling that this matter has something to do with Jiang Haoyan and Mu Tianyang. Feng Yuan said. Yes. Feng Wenhai nodded. Yulon Restaurant. On the top floor, in a luxurious private room, Shang Guanqiu sat quietly. On the dining table in front of her, there was a large table of delicious food and 2 pots of good wine. But she turned a blind eye to these. She lowered her head as if she was thinking about something. Housemaster, young Master Jiang and young Master Mu have arrived. Dong dong. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Then, a woman's voice sounded outside. Let them in. Shang Guanqiu was stunned. When she came back to her senses, she looked up at the door and smiled. The door was pushed open. The young woman who led the way retreated to the side and said respectfully, Please come in, young masters. Qin Feiyang and Mu Tianyang entered the private room. They glanced around and looked at the food and wine on the table. Mu Tianyang said with a smile, I didn't expect that I, Mu Tianyang, would be able to enter the top floor of Yulon Restaurant one day. Shang Guanqiu glanced at Mu Tianyang and then looked at the young woman standing outside the door. She waved her hand and said, No one is allowed to come in without my permission. You may leave. Yes. The young woman responded respectfully. Then she closed the door and turned to leave. Shang Guanqiu got up and looked at Qin Feiyang and Mu Tianyang. She said with a smile, Please take a seat. Then I won't stand on ceremony. Mu Tianyang laughed, found a seat at random, and then sat down. Qin Feiyong walked to the front of the dining table with a slightly stunned expression. There were 4 sets of bowls and chopsticks on the table. He sat next to Mu Tianyang. Looking at Shang Guanxiu, he asked suspiciously, "Did you invite someone else?" "Yes." Shang Guanxiu nodded. "Who?" Qin Feiyong frowned. Mu Tianyang also noticed the 4 sets of bowls and chopsticks on the table. He raised his eyebrows and looked at Shang Guanxiu. "We don't like to drink with strangers." "Don't worry. You are not strangers at all." Shang Guanxiu stood up and poured wine for both of them while chuckling. Qin Feiyong and Mu Tianyang looked at each other. A trace of suspicion flashed in their eyes. Not strangers? Who could it be? Chapter 2062. The 3 of them sat at the table and waited quietly without eating. Shang Guanxiu sensed that something was wrong and said, "Why don't you 2 drink first?" "Good idea. We can't just sit and wait." "Qin Feiyong, come, let's have a toast." Mu Tianyang raised his glass and looked at Qin Feiyong with a smile. "You like to drink too?" Qin Feiyong frowned. As the saying goes, being drunk is like singing. Life is short. Who doesn't like to drink a few glasses? Mu Tianyang smiled. Qin Feiyong shook his head and said lightly, "Forget it. I'm not interested in this." "I knew it." Mu Tianyang smiled, minding his own business as he picked up the wine cup and sniffed it. His eyes lit up. He couldn't wait to put the glass to his mouth and tasted it gently. His face immediately showed an intoxicated expression. "Is it that bad?" Qin Feiyong was speechless. No matter how good the wine was, it tasted the same to him. He would rather drink a few glasses. Shang Guanxiu glanced at Mu Tianyang and then at Qin Feiyong and said with a smile, "Young Master Jiang, this is the best wine in Yulon restaurant. Ordinary people can't drink it. Are you sure you don't want to try it? Then I'll give you face and try it." Qin Feiyong smiled faintly. He raised his glass and poured it into his mouth. "Brother Jiang, you're such a brute. This wine should be savored slowly, especially a good wine like this. You can only taste it carefully." Mu Tianyang said disdainfully. Qin Feiyong rolled his eyes at him and looked at Shang Guanxiu, saying, "There's nothing special about it. It's about the same as the ordinary wine I used to drink." Shang Guanxiu's mouth twitched. She wasn't exaggerating earlier. This wine was indeed the best wine in Yulon restaurant. Many people couldn't taste it even if they spent a lot of money. Even in the entire northern region, it was rare to see it. But now, this guy in front of him actually said that it was similar to other cheap wines? It seemed like he had met someone who didn't know anything about wine. "Miss, he doesn't understand." "I do, but..." Mu Tianyang chuckled at Shang Guanxiu. Then, he swirled his wine glass and said meaningfully, "Miss, you're treating us with such good wine. You must have an ulterior motive." "No, no, no." Shang Guanxiu hurriedly waved his hand. "The wine is good, but you can't drink too much." Mu Tianyang smiled and put down his wine glass. He looked up at Shang Guanxiu and said, "Let's not beat around the bush. Why did you invite us?" "Some time ago, something unpleasant happened between us, so I wanted to invite the 2 of you to a banquet to apologize." Shang Guanxiu smiled. "Something unpleasant? What is it? Why didn't I know about it?" Mu Tianyang was suspicious. "Brother Mu, you really know how to play dumb. Don't tell me you're not angry at all when I suddenly terminated our cooperation? And Brother Jiang, I'm really sorry for shutting you out. Master and Deputy Pavilion Leader always taught me that even if we can't make a deal, we can still be friends. I really shouldn't have made such a mistake." Shang Guanxiu sighed. Qin Feiyong and Shang Guanxiu looked at each other. "So it's about this. If you didn't mention it, I would have forgotten about it." "Me too." The 2 of them echoed each other. "Forgotten?" Shang Guanxiu sneered secretly. How could such a thing be forgotten so easily? However, given the current situation, he still had to accept it. "The 2 of you are really magnanimous. I admire you." Shang Guanxiu got up and poured Qin Feiyong and Shang Guanxiu's wine glasses to the brim. Then, she filled her own wine glass to the brim. Then, she put down the wine pot and picked up her wine glass. Looking at the 2 of them, she smiled and said, "So let's forget about it with a smile." "Okay, forget about it with a smile." Mu Tianyang grabbed the wine glass and got up with a smile. Let's skip the pleasantries. I hope we can cooperate happily in the future. Qin Feiyang glanced at the two of them, picked up his wine glass and said with a faint smile, Of course. Shang Guanqiu nodded. The three of them clinked their glasses gently and drank it all in one gulp. It seems that you have reconciled. Just as the three of them put down their wine glasses and sat down, a faint laughter suddenly sounded. This voice. Qin Feiyang and Mu Tianyang were shocked. This voice was too familiar. It was Shangguan Fenglan. Just as the voice fell, a woman in a light purple dress appeared out of thin air in the private room. Who else could it be but Shangguan Fenglan? Sister. Shangguan Qiu immediately went up to her. Shangguan Fenglan rubbed Shangguan Qiu's head dotingly and said with a smile, Thank you for your hard work. It's nothing. Shangguan Qiu shook his head. Mu Tanyang looked at the two sisters and said through voice transmission, Brother Qin, It seems that the person who wants to treat us to a banquet is not Shangguan Qiu. Yes. Qin Feiyang secretly responded. Anyone who was not a fool could see that it was Shangguan Fenglan who wanted to see them. However, he was a little depressed. If Shangguan Fenglan wanted to see them, she could have summoned them directly in Ninth Heaven Palace. Why did she have to come to Yulan Restaurant? Just as Qin Feiyang was deep in thought, Shangguan Fenglan led Shangguan Qiu to the table and sat opposite them. Greetings, Hallmaster. Qin Feiyang and Shangguan Qiu came back to their senses and quickly got up to bow. Outside, I am not the Hallmaster of the Law Enforcement Hall, and you are not disciples of Ninth Heaven Palace. We are just like ordinary people, so there is no need to be so polite. Shangguan Fenglan waved her hand. The two of them looked at each other and returned to their seats. Shangguan Fenglan smiled and said, You must be wondering why I asked you to come out now. Qin Feiyang and Shangguan Qiu nodded. 2 reasons. First of all, you and my sister did have some conflicts in the past, so I want to be a peacemaker and let these big things become small and small things become nothing. Secondly, I have some questions that I want to ask you in private. I hope you can answer me truthfully. Shangguan Fenglan said. Although her tone was very calm, there was a strong sense of oppression that made Qin Feiyang and Shangguan Qiu breathless. Qin Feiyang took a deep breath and said, Hallmaster, please ask. If we can answer, we will naturally answer. In other words, if they could not answer, it was useless even if she forced them. Shangguan Fenglan looked at Qin Feiyang and said, Did you and Feng Zihan make a deal in private? Qin Feiyang fell silent. Shangguan Fenglan said, Silence means consent? I know. No matter how I quibble, I can't fool you. Yes. I did make a deal with her. However, this will not affect our cooperation, nor will it affect my determination to eradicate the Feng clan. Qin Feiyang said. Very frank. Then what's the deal? Shangguan Fenglan asked. 4 billion soul stones, 4 pinnacle divine artifacts, and 4 pinnacle divine techniques. Qin Feiyang said. What? Shangguan Qiu couldn't help but gasp when he heard this. Even Shangguan Fenglan was a little stunned. There were so many soul stones? There were even divine artifacts and divine techniques. No wonder this guy let Feng Wenhai go. Who would be able to resist such temptation? Actually, Feng Zihan had already made such a request before he showed the 3rd video. But at that time, I didn't agree because I was determined to get rid of Feng Wenhai. After all, we have planned and worked so hard for so long. Qin Feiyang said. Shangguan Fenglan asked curiously, Then why did you agree later? Because of you and the Grand Elder. Qin Feiyang said. Me and the Grand Elder? Shangguan Fenglan was stunned. Don't be angry if I tell you. Qin Feiyang said. Go ahead. Shangguan Fenglan said. Because your attitude made me a little uncomfortable. I can understand if you're hiding in the back without doing anything without any evidence. But at that time, I took out ironclad evidence, and you had every reason to order to kill him on the spot. But what did you do? You looked on coldly and didn't care about the matter. You gave me the right to kill Feng Wenhai. Aren't you treating me like a gun? Qin Feiyang said. So, you agreed to Feng Zihan's condition and let Feng Wenhai go because you were angry with us? Shangguan Fenglan said. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. Amazing. On the one hand, you ruined Feng Wenhai's reputation. On the other hand, you obtained such a large amount of treasure. On the other hand, you also checkmated me and the Grand Elder. What a brilliant method, Shangguan Fenglan said with a smile. There was a hint of killing intent in her expression. Qin Feiyang's heart trembled. Wait. Suddenly, Shangguan Fenglan raised her eyebrows and said in a deep voice, how do you know that the Grand Elder has something to do with this matter? One had to know that all this time, she and Qin Feiyang had met alone, and the Grand Elder had never appeared. It's not hard to guess. You and Feng Yuan are both hallmasters of Empyrean Palace. If there was no one behind you, would you dare to make a move on him? And as far as I know, the 10 great elders of Empyrean Palace, except for the Grand Elder, don't care about worldly affairs and cultivate in seclusion. So, of course, this person is the Grand Elder. Of course, at first I was just guessing. But now seeing your reaction, it's finally confirmed, Qin Feiyang said. He didn't dare to say that he was spying on Shangguan Fenglan, because if Shangguan Fenglan knew that he was secretly spying on her, she would definitely fly into a rage. Shangguan Fenglan looked at Qin Feiyang in a daze. After a while, she shook her head and smiled. As expected of the person I chose, you have a brain. But then she changed the topic and said, but if you're too smart, it may not be a good thing. The threat in her words was obvious. She was warning Qin Feiyang not to play such tricks in the future. Naturally, Qin Feiyang could also tell. He said, this disciple will remember. Shangguan Fenglan smiled faintly, looked at the two, and said, another thing. Where did you get the 9 Tunes Yellow Dragon Elixir and the 9 Transformation Dragon Blood Elixir? Qin Feiyang and Mu Tianyang frowned and turned to look at Shangguan Qiu at the same time. Shangguan Qiu looked at Qin Feiyang and Shangguan Qiu's eyes and began to panic inexplicably. Shangguan Fenglan said faintly, you don't have to look at her, just answer my question. Qin Feiyang suppressed the anger in his heart and looked at Shangguan Fenglan, saying, these 2 elixirs were jointly developed by Mu Tianyang and I. Developed by you? Shangguan Fenglan was stunned. Chapter 2063. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. Shangguan Fenglan frowned and said, it's not that I doubt you, but can you really develop this kind of elixir? This was equivalent to creating a brand new elixir recipe. Even those old antiques who had lived for countless years couldn't do this, let alone these 2 young people in front of her. Brother Jiang didn't lie to you. We both like to refine elixirs and study elixirs since we were young. I remember one night 50 years ago, we got together to drink tea and chat as usual. But suddenly, Brother Jiang asked a question. Since the red fire glaze elixir exists in this world, why can't there be other elixirs that can improve one's cultivation level? We discussed for a while, and then we hit it off and started to study this kind of elixir. We spent 15 years on it. During that time, we really worked hard. I don't know how many elixir furnaces we blew up. In the end, God didn't let us down. We finally developed 2 kinds of elixirs, the 9 Chu Yellow Dragon Elixir and the 9 Turn Dragon Blood Elixir. Mu Tianyang smiled and said with pride on his face as if it was real, you really developed it? Seeing the sincerity on their faces, it didn't seem like they were talking, but Shangguan Fenglan just couldn't believe it. So did Shangguan Qiu. Researching a new kind of medicinal pill, this was simply a fantasy. Qin Feiyang sighed and said, to be honest, I still regret developing these 2 kinds of elixirs. Why? The 2 sisters looked at him suspiciously. If this was true, it would be a shocking achievement, destined to be famous for thousands of years. How could he regret it? Brother Mu and I have always been on good terms, even as close as brothers. But after developing these 2 kinds of elixirs, we gradually began to have differences. What I mean is that these 2 kinds of elixirs can benefit the world. It's better to announce it to the public and share it with the world. Brother Mu, what you mean is that we worked so hard to develop them. Why should we share them with others? Later, our differences became bigger and bigger, almost to the point of falling out. Qin Feiyang sighed. No wonder your relationship is so complicated. No wonder, when you came to me to cooperate, Mu Qing also ran out. Shangguan Qiu was suddenly enlightened. Qin Feiyang, although it's a lie, you don't have to elevate yourself and belittle me, do you? Mu Tianyang said angrily. Qin Feiyang transmitted his voice. Am I wrong? You're that kind of person. All right. I won't stoop to your level. Mu Tianyang snorted. Qin Feiyang secretly smiled proudly, then looked at Shangguan Fenglan and said, although we have a bad relationship, in fact, in the depths of Brother Mu's heart, he still cares about me. When he learned that Feng Yuan plotted against me, he did not hesitate to stand up and help me. That's a nice sentence. Mu Tianyang laughed inwardly. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, speaking of which, I really have to thank Feng Yuan. If it weren't for him, I'm afraid that Brother Mu and I wouldn't be able to return to the past. Shangguan Xiu asked, now, you've buried the hatchet? Yes, we've already discussed it. In the future, we'll split the profits from your treasure school 50-50. And we'll continue the unfinished research. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. What research? Shangguan Fenglan and Shangguan Xiu were surprised. Before we had a disagreement, we were already researching a kind of elixir that can help war gods break through cultivation. Qin Feiyang said, what are you doing? Are you going to expose the 4 symbols everlasting elixir? Mu Tianyang discreetly raised his eyebrows and secretly asked. No matter how good the 9 Chu Yellow Dragon elixir and the 9 Transformation Dragon Blood elixir are, it's only useful for people below war gods. For war gods, it's not that tempting. But the 4 symbols everlasting elixir is different. Once this elixir appears, it will definitely cause a mad scramble, especially for the disciples of our 9th Heaven Palace. After all, most of the disciples of our 9th Heaven Palace are war gods. Qin Feiyang said inwardly. It makes sense, I don't object. But we must use the highest price to trade with the treasure pavilion. Mu Tianyang pondered for a while and transmitted his voice to Shangguan Xiu. Of course, Qin Feiyang replied. A kind of elixir that can help war gods break through cultivation? Shangguan Fenglan and Shangguan Xiu looked at each other. Wasn't this a little too shocking? Shangguan Fenglan came back to her senses and asked hurriedly, how's your research going? It's almost done. Qin Feiyang nodded. Shangguan Xiu asked in a hurry, show it to us. Qin Feiyang said, it hasn't been refined yet. I'm missing a kind of herb. What kind of herb? Shangguan Xiu asked. Qin Feiyang said, white tiger blood essence. White tiger blood essence. Shangguan Xiu was stunned. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something and asked in surprise, did you ask the Deputy Pavilion Master for the Wuji Divine Fruit and the blood essence of the 4 sacred beasts to refine this kind of elixir? Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. This? Shangguan Xiu was stunned. Then, he shook his head regretfully and said, the treasure pavilion doesn't have the white tiger blood essence at the moment. But if you give me some time, I'm sure I can find it. After all, the treasure pavilion doesn't only exist in the North region. We also have forces in Dongling, Western Desert, and Southern Wilderness. Distant water can't put out a nearby fire. Qin Feiyang shook his head and sighed. He looked at Shangguan Fenglan and said, you should know that Feng Yuan raised the requirement to enter the resource hall to target me? Yes. Shangguan Fenglan nodded. Qin Feiyang shook his head and said, registration starts the day after tomorrow. There's no time. This? Shangguan Fenglan frowned. Shangguan Xiu suddenly said, sister, doesn't Feng Yuan have a white tiger divine beast with him? As soon as Shangguan Xiu said that, Qin Feiyang's eyes lit up. He then looked at Shangguan Fenglan. He wanted to know Shangguan Fenglan's reaction. Shangguan Fenglan was stunned. She looked at Shangguan Xiu and asked suspiciously, you want me to go to Feng Yuan? Yes. Shangguan Xiu nodded. It won't work. Feng Yuan has always seen me as a thorn in his side. How can he give me the white tiger essence blood? Shangguan Fenglan shook her head. Actually, as long as the temple master wants to, Feng Yuan will hand over the white tiger essence blood even if you don't do it yourself. Qin Feiyang smiled. What do you mean? Shangguan Fenglan looked at him in confusion. Qin Feiyang said, I won't hide it from you. I've already made a move on Feng Yuan. He will send the white tiger essence blood here in the wee hours of the morning. Made a move? Shangguan Fenglan and Shangguan Xiu looked at each other, their faces full of surprise. We kidnapped Feng Zijuan. Qin Feiyang said. What? The two sisters looked at Qin Feiyang and Mu Tianyang, stunned. Why are you so surprised? I said that although I have a private deal with Feng Zihan, it doesn't affect my determination to get rid of them. Qin Feiyang smiled. Shangguan Fenglan said in a low voice, You are really bold to do such a thing in the Ninth Heaven Palace. If the Temple Master doesn't agree, I will send Feng Zijuan back. Anyway, he doesn't know that it was me and Brother Mu who kidnapped him. But Temple Master, you and Feng Yuan are old rivals. You should know better than me how much Feng Yuan loves Feng Zijuan. If Feng Zijuan is unfortunately killed, you can imagine how big of a blow it will be to Feng Yuan. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Shangguan Fenglan frowned and said, Isn't this a little too despicable? Despicable? Feng Yuan secretly bribed the people of the Law Enforcement Hall to take away your power. Isn't that despicable? Besides, this Feng Zijuan deserved to die. Qin Feiyang said. This? Shangguan Fenglan hesitated. Shangguan Qiu said, Sister, since we are going to deal with him, there is no need to be merciful. Shangguan Fenglan looked at Shangguan Qiu, then looked at Qin Feiyang and Mu Tianyang. She nodded and said, Okay, you can deal with this matter yourselves. It was tantamount to acquiescence. Mu Tianyang smiled secretly and said, Brother Qin, this is a smart move. You directly drag them into the water. Qin Feiyang smiled secretly and looked at Shangguan Fenglan. He said, Then after midnight, we will have to trouble the Temple Master to cover us. Cover? Shangguan Fenglan was suspicious. Feng Yuan has already suspected me of Feng Zijuan's kidnapping. When we entered the city, he had already sent people to follow us. I guess when we return to the Ninth Heaven Palace after the deal, we may be blocked by him at the stairway to heaven. At that time, we will need the Temple Master to cover us. Qin Feiyang said. He had originally planned to let Shangguan Qiu testify, but now Shangguan Fenglan had taken the initiative to come to him. How could he let her go? Because Shangguan Fenglan's words were more credible than Shangguan Qiu's. Shangguan Fenglan heard this and frowned. She said, Why do I feel like I have been tricked by you? No. You just have to cover for us. You can't interfere with anything else. Even if the matter is exposed in the end, it will not implicate you. Qin Feiyang said, I have already covered for you. It will not implicate me. Do you think I am stupid? Shangguan Fenglan was angry. She had really been tricked. Unknowingly, she had been set up. Qin Feiyang smiled embarrassedly. Shangguan Fenglan glanced at the two and let out a long breath. She asked, The deal is at midnight, right? Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. You don't need me to go? Shangguan Fenglan asked. Yes. Brother Mu and I will go, Qin Feiyang said. Shangguan Fenglan said, Well, we will stay here until midnight. But I have a condition. What condition? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Shangguan Fenglan said, I want to see you refine the elixir that can help the god of war break through with my own eyes. No problem. Qin Feiyang nodded without hesitation. The temperature and details needed to refine the four symbols infinite divine elixir were not something that could be grasped at a glance. So there was no need to worry about Shangguan Fenglan secretly learning from him. Shangguan Fenglan said, One last question. What is your relationship with the Deputy Pavilion Master of the Treasure School? Qin Feiyang frowned and turned to look at Shangguan Qiu. Only Shangguan Qiu knew about his meeting with the Deputy Pavilion Master. There was no doubt that she must have told Shangguan Fenglan. Chapter 2064. First, it was the 9-chew yellow dragon pill and the 9-transformation dragon blood pill. Now, it was the meeting with the Deputy Pavilion Master. Why was this woman so talkative? Qin Feiyang could no longer suppress the anger in his heart. He looked at Shangguan Qiu and said, Pardon me for asking, but are you from the Nine Heavens Palace or the Treasure Pavilion? Shangguan Qiu's expression froze. Although you and the Temple Master are sisters, shouldn't you take a stand? I'm curious. If the Deputy Pavilion Master knows that you gave the information to the people of the Nine Heavens Palace, how will he react? Qin Feiyang said again. He really didn't want to give this woman any more face. When Shangguan Qiu heard this, he could not help but look a little flustered. Shangguan Fenglan frowned and said, This has nothing to do with my sister. Nothing to do with her? Then, Temple Master, you are so resourceful. You even know that I have a relationship with the Deputy Pavilion Master. Qin Feiyong sneered. You don't need to know how I know. I won't ask about your business. Anyway, don't drag this into my sister's business. Shangguan Fenglan said lightly. What business can I have? Qin Feiyong was curious. Do I have to explain it to you? Fine, I'll fulfill your wish. Who are you and Mu Tianyang? What's your background? Up until now, all of these things have remained a mystery, Shangguan Fenglan said. Mu Tianyang raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, I didn't expect that the Temple Master of the Nine Heavens Palace would secretly investigate the identities of two disciples. Qin Feiyong smiled faintly and said, Brother Mu, it's our honor to have the Temple Master put in so much effort. Enough. Stop singing the same tune. It's not me who wants to investigate you. It's the First Elder. Shangguan Fenglan said impatiently. Qin Feiyong said, So, it's the First Elder's idea to ask about my relationship with the Deputy Pavilion Master? Yes. Shangguan Fenglan nodded. Then I don't understand. Although I am a disciple of Nine Heavens Palace, I still have my freedom. Does it have anything to do with the Great Elder? Qin Feiyong was suspicious. Shangguan Fenglan's eyes suddenly turned cold, and she said, Be careful of what you say. Actually, even if you don't tell me, I know that the First Elder has a grudge with the Vice Pavilion Master. Qin Feiyong said. Shangguan Fenglan's pupils contracted. Could it be that this kid knew about that incident back then? Brother Jiang, what happened? Mu Tianyang looked at Qin Feiyong curiously. A long time ago, the First Elder's son entered the Heavenly Dragon Sea to steal a rank 9 soul line, but he was seriously injured by the Vice Pavilion Master. Later, on the way back to Nine Heaven Palace, he was attacked by sea beasts and unfortunately lost his life. And because of this, the Great Elder has always held a grudge against the Vice Pavilion Master. Furthermore, he even crippled one of the Vice Pavilion Master's legs. So when the Great Elder knew that I had a grudge with the Vice Pavilion Master, he couldn't help but be a little angry. Qin Feiyong said lightly, There's such a thing? Mu Tianyang was surprised. Shangguan Fenglan glanced at Mu Tianyang, then looked at Qin Feiyong and said in a deep voice, How did you know? Although this matter has been in the past for a long time, it was not a secret back then. As long as you have the heart, it's not difficult to find out, Qin Feiyong said. Shangguan Fenglan said angrily, You were also investigating us behind our backs? Sigh. You are all big shots, and I can't afford to offend you, so I can only investigate your background to cater to you, lest I get killed one day, and I don't even know why, Qin Feiyong said. Shangguan Fenglan stared at Qin Feiyong with a bone-piercing chill in her eyes. Although she had been in contact with Qin Feiyong in the past, they didn't talk much, so she didn't feel anything. But this time, after talking slowly, she found that this boy had far exceeded her expectations. He was even somewhat out of control. This reminded her of what the Great Elder had said back then, that a person who couldn't be controlled should be immediately obliterated. But at the same time, after this conversation, she became more and more curious about Qin Feiyong. It was as if there was a kind of magic that attracted her to the mysterious aura that he exuded. According to the Great Elder, she could take action now, but in her heart, she was a little hesitant. To be exact, she couldn't bear to do it and wanted to see the follow-up development. Phew. A moment later, Shangguan Fenglan took a deep breath, looked at Qin Feiyong and said, Again, it's not necessarily a good thing to be too smart. Qin Feiyong cupped his hands and said, Thank you for your reminder, Temple Master. I will keep it in mind. Shangguan Fenglan glanced at him indifferently, then lowered her head in silence. No one knew what she was thinking. Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed, and he turned to look at Shangguan Xiao, saying, Let's talk about our cooperation. That's what I was thinking. Shangguan Xiao nodded. In fact, this was one of the reasons why she asked Qin Feiyong out this time. After all, the cooperation with Qin Feiyong was the Deputy Pavilion Master's order, so it had to be handled as soon as possible. Qin Feiyong said, How did you and Brother Mu cooperate before? 9 Chu Yellow Dragon Elixir, Divine Crystals. 9 Turn Dragon Blood Elixir, Soul Stones, Shangguan Xiao said. Just as I expected. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and asked, "How much do you pay Brother Mu for refining a 9-turn dragon blood elixir?" 1,000 soul stones. Shang Guanxiu said. Qin Feiyang turned to look at Mu Tianyang. 1,000 soul stones indeed. Mu Tianyang nodded. That's a good price. 1,000 soul stones, 10,000 soul stones, 100 soul stones, 1,000 soul stones. And you don't have to pay for the herbs. You can earn so much just by refining the elixir. Qin Feiyang looked at Mu Tianyang and smiled. Mu Tianyang rolled his eyes and said, "No matter how much I earn, I can't compare with you." Qin Feiyang shook his head with a smile and looked at Shang Guanxiu, saying, "I don't care how you cooperate with Brother Mu, but if you cooperate with me, you have to follow my rules." Shang Guanxiu raised his eyebrows and said, 1,000 soul stones is the maximum limit of the treasure pavilion. Don't worry, the 9-turn dragon blood elixir will still be 1,000 soul stones per elixir. But you have to use soul stones to trade for the 9-turn dragon elixir. Give me 500 soul stones per elixir. Qin Feiyang said. Why don't you just rob? Shang Guanxiu was a little annoyed. In fact, he had expected that the 9-turn dragon elixir would be traded with soul stones, but he did not expect the price to be so high. 500 soul stones. This was an exorbitant price. 500 soul stones is not a lot. If the treasure pavilion auctioned with soul stones, one 9-turn dragon elixir would be worth at least tens of thousands. Qin Feiyang said. Shang Guanxiu said, the treasure pavilion has never used soul stones to bid before. Rules are dead, but people are flexible. As a businessman, you should always be flexible. For elixirs like the 9-turn dragon elixir, using divine crystals to bid for it is simply a waste of its value. Qin Feiyang said. A waste of its value. Shang Guanxiu murmured. Listening to what this person said, it seemed to make some sense. After all, this elixir was directly related to one's cultivation level. Even if it was auctioned with soul stones, it would still cause a frenzy. After pondering for a while, Shang Guanxiu exhaled and looked at Qin Feiyang. He nodded and said, Okay, deal. Haha, Brother Qin is really something. I'm impressed. Mu Tianyang laughed secretly. If the 9-turn dragon elixir was traded with soul stones, there would undoubtedly be a large income in the future. Thinking back to what Mu Qing did in the past, it was really incomparable to this person. Qin Feiyang said to himself, Don't be happy too early. You'll be in charge of refining elixirs. Me? Mu Tianyang was stunned. Of course. You want soul stones but don't want to refine elixirs. How can there be such a good deal in the world? Qin Feiyang said. Okay. Leave refining elixirs to me. Mu Tianyang was somewhat helpless. In fact, he did not want to refine elixirs, because refining elixirs was too time-consuming. However, what Qin Feiyang said made sense. There was no free lunch in the world. If you wanted to get something, you had to pay the price. Of course, he could not refine elixirs himself. After all, Mu Qing was also an elixir alchemist. This kind of thing would definitely be left to Mu Qing. Hearing Mu Tianyang's response, Qin Feiyang looked at Shang Guanxiu and said with a smile, Although we are cooperating now, if you want to make a deal in the future, you should still look for Brother Mu. Look for him? Shang Guanxiu was slightly stunned and said speechlessly, I really admire you guys. After fighting for so long, you are cooperating in the end. This is called the unpredictable world. Next, let's talk about the Wuji divine fruit and the divine beast blood essence. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. Shang Guanxiu seemed to have been prepared. He took out 3 jade bottles and a rectangular jade box from his interspatial ring. The jade bottles were not big, and there was a little blood in them. The jade box was about half a meter long, and the lid was tightly closed. Looking at the jade bottles and jade boxes, Qin Feiyang and Mu Tianyang's eyes suddenly lit up. Mu Tianyang could not wait to open the jade box. He saw fruits lying quietly inside. These fruits were only the size of an egg. They were shaped like small gourds, and the surface of the fruits was shining with a crystal-clear divine light. Qin Feiyang also picked up the 3 jade bottles and examined them carefully. The blood was different from ordinary blood. It looked like precious diamonds, shining with a hazy light. Furthermore, when the jade bottle was opened, An extremely strong and pure divine beast's aura immediately surged out. That's right. It's the blood essence of the azure dragon, the vermilion bird, and the black tortoise. Qin Feiyang whispered and looked up at Mu Tianyang. Mu Tianyang said with a smile, 20 Wuji divine fruits. Not one more, not one less. Qin Feiyang smiled and looked at Shangguanqiu. He said, name your price. Shangguanqiu pursed his lips and said with a smile, I was going to use divine gems to trade for these things. Looking at the smile on Shangguanqiu's face, Qin Feiyang could not help but have a bad feeling. Mu Tianyang glanced at Qin Feiyang and Shangguanqiu, as if he was watching a show. Shangguanqiu's smile became brighter. He said, but you just said that a businessman should know how to be flexible. So now, I am going to use soul stones to trade with you. Qin Feiyang's face twitched. Was he slapping himself in the face? Chapter 2065. What do you think? I learned and applied it on the spot. Not bad, right? Shangguanqiu teased. Seeing Qin Feiyang being defeated, she felt inexplicably happy. Impressive, impressive. Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. If he had known, he would have talked about this deal first before discussing the cooperation. He had dug a hole for himself. Shangguanqiu smiled proudly. She had finally won this round. Qin Feiyang collected himself and said, tell me, how many soul stones? 60 drops of essence blood, 100,000 soul stones per drop. As for the Wuji divine fruit, Shangguanqiu thought for a while and said with a smile, I'll give you 100,000 each. You make it sound like you're at a disadvantage. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes. Mu Tianyang, who had been watching coldly from the side, suddenly said, Miss, I have a question. What is it? Shangguanqiu looked at him suspiciously. 1 drop of blood, 100,000 soul stones per drop, and 100,000 soul stones per Wuji divine fruit. And the elixir we're researching needs 4 drops of essence blood and 1 Wuji divine fruit. In other words, just the cost of building it costs 500,000 soul stones. In the future, when we succeed, how much do you plan to bid? Mu Tianyang asked. Even if you bid 1 million soul stones, someone will buy it. After all, this is an elixir that can help the god of war break through. It's not at the same level as the 9 Chu Yellow Dragon elixir and the 9 Transformation Dragon Blood elixir. Shangguanqiu smiled confidently. 1 million soul stones. Even in the 9th Heaven Palace, only a few disciples can afford it. Mu Tianyang said, good things go to the highest bidder. If everyone can afford it, how can it be good? Shangguanqiu said, you're indeed a businessman. You're better than anyone else. Mu Tianyang shook his head and smiled. Shangguanqiu smiled and looked at Qin Feiyang, saying, the total price of 60 drops of blood essence is 6 million. And the total price of 20 Wuji immortal fruits is 2 million. That's a total of 8 million. Young Master Jiang, please pay the bill. 8 million soul stones. Qin Feiyang sighed deeply. Just thinking about it made his heart ache. You even got 4 billion soul stones from Feng Zihan. What are 8 million soul stones to you? Shangguanqiu said, people like you who grew up with a silver spoon in their mouths will never understand the life of people like us at the bottom. Back then, forget about 4 billion soul stones, even 40,000 soul stones. No, even 1,000 soul stones was an astronomical figure to me. Qin Feiyang sighed. Shangguanqiu smiled and said, I've never experienced this feeling before. That's why I said you don't understand. But since it's a business deal, I naturally can't go back on my word. Qin Feiyang smiled and secretly transmitted his voice. Old Zhao, help me count out 8 million soul stones. All right. Zhao Tailai responded. Very soon. Qin Feiyang took out an interspatial ring and threw it to Shangguanqiu. Shangguanqiu carefully counted it and put it away with a smile on his face. Qin Feiyang also sent the blood essence and the Wuji divine fruit into the ancient castle. Mu Tianyang smiled and said, now we only need the white tiger blood essence. I really hope that midnight will come soon. You can't rush it. Just wait and see. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. They're still in Yulan Tower? In the resource hall. Feng Yuan looked at Feng Wenhai's shadow and frowned.
Yes.
Feng Wenhai nodded. Is it really not them? Feng Yuan muttered. Father, can we leave Jiang Haoyin alone for now? Saving Zijuan is more important. Feng Wenhai said. Feng Yuan frowned and said angrily, didn't I investigate Jiang Haoyin to save Zijuan? Feng Wenhai said, but now it's proven that it's not them. Why are you still thinking about these questions? Don't worry. I've already prepared the white tiger blood essence. I'll just wait for midnight to come and trade with them. Feng Yuan said. Feng Wenhai asked, then do you want me to find someone to ambush them in advance? With this old man taking action personally, do you still need others? Besides, if even this old man can't keep them, then the people you sent will be even more useless. Don't worry about this matter. This old man will handle it. You just wait for the news at home. Feng Yuan said. Okay. Feng Wenhai nodded. At this moment, whether it was Qin Feiyang and the others, or the people of the Feng family, they all felt that time was passing very slowly. It was clearly only a few hours, but it felt like a few centuries had passed. Amidst the torturous wait, dawn finally arrived. In the private room, Qin Feiyang and Mu Tianyang looked at each other and suddenly stood up. During this period of time, Shangguan Fenglan had been resting with her eyes closed. When she heard the commotion, she opened her eyes and looked at Qin Feiyang and Feng Yu. She asked, Feng Yuan's strength is not inferior to mine. Can you two really do it? If the hall master can come in person, we naturally can't ask for more. Mu Tianyang said with a smile. Hearing this, Shangguan Fenglan did not even reply and directly closed her eyes. Hypocrite, Mu Tianyang secretly said. Get used to it. Qin Feiyang patted him on the shoulder, took out 2 illusory pills, casually changed his appearance, and entered the black tortoise world, flying toward the West City Gate. In the early morning, even in the city, it was difficult to see many people, let alone outside the city. The plains outside the West City Gate were quiet. Coming to the sky above the plains, Qin Feiyang and Mu Tianyang were not in a hurry to show up. They had been looking for traces of Feng Yuan, because they were worried that Feng Yuan might be hiding in the dark and catch them off guard when they were not paying attention. In short, before they saw Feng Yuan, they would never go out first. And in the end, they searched the entire plains outside the West City Gate but did not find Feng Yuan. This old thing, is he not here yet? Mu Tianyang frowned. This is related to Feng Zijuan's life and death. How could he dare to be negligent? I think he should be the same as us now, hiding in the space divine object, monitoring the movements outside. Qin Feiyang scanned the night sky. It seemed that this old thing would not obediently hand over the white tiger blood essence. Then go out and search with your spirit sense. Mu Tianyang laughed. With Feng Yuan's status and strength, do you think he won't have the hidden soul stone? Qin Feiyang sneered. Then we can't just stay here and do nothing. Mu Tianyang said, don't worry. He can't outlast us, unless he doesn't want to save Feng Zijuan. Qin Feiyang sneered. Next, the two stood in the black tortoise world, quietly waiting. Sure enough, it was as Qin Feiyang had expected. About a moment later, a red-haired old man appeared in the sky above the plains. Who else could it be but Feng Yuan? He looked around and frowned. What's going on? Why haven't you come yet? Didn't you just come now? But before his voice faded, a mocking laugh sounded behind him. Feng Yuan was slightly taken aback and quickly turned to look, only to see 2 big men standing in the void not far away. These 2 big men were naturally Qin Feiyang and Mu Tianyang after changing their appearances. The clothes of the Nine Heavens Palace had also been changed, and they were all wearing black clothes. Feng Yuan looked at Qin Feiyang and said in a deep voice, When did you guys come? Qin Feiyang said, You should have come before us. Then why are you hiding? Let me wait for so long. Feng Yuan said angrily. Aren't you hiding too? Qin Feiyang looked at him mockingly. Feng Yuan's heart trembled. He actually guessed his thoughts. It seemed that these 2 people were not ordinary people. This is definitely not your true appearance. Who are you? Feng Yuan said in a deep voice. Hall Master Feng Yuan is indeed smart. But do you think we will be stupid enough to tell you our true identity? Qin Feiyang laughed contemptuously. Feng Yuan clenched his hands, holding back his anger, and asked, Where is Feng Zijuan? Where is the thing we want? Qin Feiyang did not answer, but asked instead. Feng Yuan took out a jade bottle from his bosom, which was half filled with blood, and said, 20 drops of white tiger blood essence, not a drop less. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed, and he stretched out his hand. Let me verify, Feng Yuan said. Give me Feng Zijuan first. Impossible. Your cultivation is so strong. If I give you Feng Zijuan first, what if you go back on your words? Qin Feiyang said. Feng Yuan said, then this old man is also worried that you will go back on your words after getting the white tiger blood essence. If this stalemate continues, it will not be good for you. How about this? Let me show you something first. Qin Feiyang took out Feng Zijuan's universe ring and threw it to Feng Yuan. Feng Yuan caught it in his hand, looked down, and his face immediately darkened. Qin Feiyang said with a smile, I believe you are familiar with this universe ring. If you dare to harm even a single hair on his head, then even if you can fly, this old man will still kill you. Feng Yuan said fiercely, Don't worry. As long as you give me the white tiger blood essence, I promise to give you a healthy Feng Zijuan. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. You want this old man to hand over the blood essence first? Never. How about this? Let's exchange the person and the goods at the same time. Feng Yuan said. No, no, no. Your cultivation is too strong. If we capture Feng Zijuan and you directly release your pressure to imprison us, won't we become lambs waiting to be slaughtered? It seems that you are not sincere at all. In that case, this deal is off. As for Feng Zijuan, you can wait to collect his corpse. Qin Feiyang smiled coldly, grabbed Mu Tianyang and disappeared without a trace. Wait, this old man will give it to you. Feng Yuan's expression changed, and he quickly shouted. Qin Feiyang and Feng Yuan appeared out of thin air with smiles on their faces. Give it to me, Qin Feiyang said as he stretched out his hand. Feng Yuan waved his hand, and the jade bottle in his hand immediately turned into a stream of light and landed in front of Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang grabbed it in his hand and opened the bottle cap. A terrifying aura suddenly roared out. This was the aura of the divine beast White Tiger. Mu Tianyang said with a smile, This is the White Tiger blood essence. Thank you, Hall Master Feng Yuan. Wait here. We will bring Feng Zijuan out immediately. Qin Feiyang laughed and brought Mu Tianyang to the Black Tortoise Realm's herb field. He immediately controlled the Black Tortoise Realm and flew away like lightning. Outside, seeing the two disappear again, Feng Yuan immediately released his divine sense and enveloped the surroundings. But he couldn't find anything in the void. Could it be that he has also merged with the hidden soul stone? Feng Yuan frowned. But then, a trace of ridicule crept up in his eyes as he thought to himself, You think you can escape from this old man's palm with the hidden soul stone? When Zijuan appears, it will be your time of death. However, he didn't know that the Black Tortoise Realm had already entered Sky Dragon City. Chapter 2066. Just as Qin Feiyang controlled the Black Tortoise Realm and was about to return to Yulan Restaurant, a terrifying aura erupted outside the West City Gate like a volcano. The owner of this aura was Feng Yuan. Obviously, he had realized that he had been tricked. There was no doubt about it. The entire Sky Dragon City was awakened by Feng Yuan's aura at this moment. Everyone was bewildered. In the private room, Shangguan Xiao and Shangguan Fenglan stood in front of the window, looking in the direction of the West City Gate. Shangguan Fenglan said, It seems that they have succeeded. Even Feng Yuan was fooled by them. What a terrifying pair. Shangguan Xiao sighed. So in the future, when you work with them, you must be careful. Shangguan Fenglan reminded him. I know. Shangguan Xiao nodded. We are not bad people. Why are you guarding against us? Before the two finished speaking, a faint laughter sounded. Qin Feiyang and Mu Tianyang appeared in the private room. Not bad people? Do you think you are good people? Shameless. Shangguan Xiao looked at them with disdain. Qin Feiyang and Mu Tianyang looked at each other and could not help but laugh. Then, they looked up and looked at the West City Gate. The West City Gate, above the plains. Feng Yuan clenched his fists. His long red hair danced in the wind like a blood waterfall. His eyes were also red. From afar, He looked like a wild beast that was about to go crazy. Damn it! Damn it! How dare you trick me? This is unforgivable. At first, he had planned to kill Feng Zijuan as soon as he appeared. However, he did not expect that after waiting for so long, the other party did not appear. It was obvious. The other party had no intention of returning Feng Zijuan to him. In other words, he had been tricked. As the palace master of the Ninth Heaven Palace's resource hall, how could he not be angry? Whoosh! Accompanied by two ear-piercing sounds, several city guards flew over. It's Feng Yuan. When they saw Feng Yuan's face, their faces changed. Lord Feng Yuan, what happened to you? Do you need any help? Several people hurriedly went up and asked. Feng Yuan turned a deaf ear to him, his face dark to the extreme. Swish! Two more figures appeared in front of Feng Yuan. Grandpa, what's going on? Father, where is Zijuan? It was Feng Wenhai and Feng Zihan. The father and daughter duo scanned their surroundings. Other than the few city guards, there was no one else. Could it be? The father and daughter trembled and hurriedly looked at Feng Yuan again. I will not let them off. Zihan, come back with me and block the stairway to heaven. Anyone who returns to Nine Heaven Palace now is a suspect. Feng Yuan waved his hand, and a teleportation altar was activated. He then stepped onto the altar with anger. Zihan, this. Feng Wenhai glanced at Feng Yuan, then at Feng Zihan, his face filled with anxiety. Father, don't worry. We will save Zijuan. Feng Zihan smiled and comforted him before turning around and stepping onto the altar. After Feng Wenhai sent the two of them off, he turned to look in the direction of the Yulan Pavilion, a cold light flashing in his eyes. Whoosh! Immediately after, he teleported into the mountains outside the plains and took out the image crystal. Soon, the shadow of a middle-aged man in black appeared. Feng Wenhai said in a deep voice, Are they still in the Yulan Pavilion? Yes. The middle-aged man in black nodded. Feng Wenhai frowned. Did anyone come out during this period? Zhang Haoyan and Mu Tianyang have not appeared, but Shang Guanxiu did come out a few times. The middle-aged man in black said, Why did she come out? Feng Wenhai asked, Get someone to send wine up. The middle-aged man in black said. Suddenly, there was a commotion at the entrance of the restaurant. Wait, someone seems to have come out. The middle-aged man in black was still hiding in the alley opposite. After hearing the commotion, he said something to Feng Wenhai and turned his head suspiciously. How is that possible? Immediately, his eyes widened, filled with disbelief. What's wrong? Feng Wenhai was surprised. The middle-aged man in black turned a deaf ear and stared at the entrance of the restaurant in shock. He saw two men and two women coming out of the Yulan Pavilion, one after another. It was Qin Feiyang and the other three. However, at this moment, Qin Feiyang and Mu Tianyang reeked of alcohol and walked unsteadily. Feng Wenhai said, What did you see? Why is she still here? The middle-aged man in black murmured, looking back at Feng Wenhai, and said in a deep voice, It's Shangguan Fenglan. She's with Zhang Haoyan. What? Hearing this, Feng Wenhai was shocked and hurriedly said, Are you sure you didn't see wrongly? No, it's absolutely true. The middle-aged man in black said in a deep voice. Shangguan Fenglan, Shangguan Qiu. Why are these two sisters with them? Feng Wenhai murmured, his heart full of confusion. Sister, they're so drunk that you have to send them back personally. At the entrance of the restaurant, Shangguan Qiu glanced at Qin Feiyang and Shangguan Qiu and smiled at Shangguan Fenglan. I'm not drunk. I'm not drunk either. Then let's go. Let's go back and continue fighting until dawn. Let's go. I'm not afraid of you. Qin Feiyang and Mu Tianyang said to each other, then put their arms around each other's shoulders and tried to enter the restaurant. Shangguan Qiu stopped them and said helplessly, You really can't drink anymore. Go back and rest? Get out of my way. It's not like I don't have money to pay the bill. Quick, give me a few more jars. I must make him drunk today. Qin Feiyang shouted. Shangguan Qiu smiled helplessly, looked at Shangguan Fenglan and said, Sister, send them back quickly. Okay. Shangguan Fenglan nodded, forcibly swept up Qin Feiyang and Mu Tianyang, and then rose into the air, disappearing into the night sky like lightning. Ninth Heaven Palace. In front of the stairway, Feng Yuan stood on the first step, his face gloomy. Feng Zihan stood by the side, his eyes flashing with a cold light. Whoosh! Suddenly, accompanied by the sound of something breaking through the air, 3 young men flew to the top of the mountain. Greetings, Temple Master. Greetings, Senior Sister Zihan. The 3 of them were inner disciples of Ninth Heaven Palace, and they had the cultivation of a half-step Divine Lord. When they saw Feng Yuan and Feng Zihan, they were first stunned, then quickly ran over and bowed. Feng Yuan glanced at the 3 of them and said, "Where did you come from?" "Outside." The 3 of them were a little puzzled. What did that mean? "Be specific," Feng Yuan shouted. "We just came back from the Sky Dragon Sea." The 3 of them quickly said, "Experience? Since it's an experience, why are there no wounds on your body, no blood stains?" Feng Yuan said angrily. The 3 of them were depressed to the extreme. What kind of question was that? "Speak," Feng Yuan shouted angrily. "Yes, yes, yes. Normally, disciples like us who go to the Sky Dragon Sea to experience will wash off the blood stains on our bodies before coming back. Firstly, we are afraid of dirtying the stairway, and secondly, we pay attention to our image. As for the wounds, of course there are. We will take off our clothes now for you to check." As the 3 of them spoke, they took off their clothes. Their upper bodies were indeed full of scars. Feng Zihan swept a glance at those scars, looked at Feng Yuan and said, "Grandfather, they are fine. You believe so much that their injuries were caused in the Heavenly Dragon Sea? What if they did it on purpose?" Feng Yuan said angrily. Feng Zihan sighed. Now, her grandfather had already lost his mind a little. The 3 disciples also looked at each other. Who would purposely injure themselves? Was this Feng Yuan crazy today? But this kind of thing, they absolutely did not dare to say it out. Feng Yuan looked at the 3 of them and asked, "Is there a witness to prove that you were in the Sky Dragon Sea?" Witness? The 3 of them could not help but be annoyed in their hearts. If it were not because the people standing in front of them were Feng Yuan and Feng Zihan, they would definitely fly off the handle on the spot. It was simply inexplicable. The 3 of us have always been together. We can prove each other. As for the other witnesses, if Lord Hall Master does not believe, you can personally go to the Sky Dragon Sea to ask. Because during this period of experience, many people have seen us. The 3 of them held back their anger and said respectfully, "Have you eaten the guts of a leopard? You actually dare to make this old man go to the Sky Dragon Sea personally? Do you know that your current attitude is already enough to give this old man a reason to kill you on the spot?" Feng Yuan shouted. "Disciple knows his mistake. Lord Hall Master, please spare our lives." The 3 of them quivered and hurriedly knelt on the ground, begging. Feng Zijuan also hurriedly advised, "Grandfather, you are a little too anxious now. Calm down." "Shut up." Feng Yuan completely did not listen, looked at the 3 of them and said, "Stand to the side for this old man. Without this old man's permission, you are not allowed to take half a step away." "Yes." The 3 of them nodded, hurriedly got up and ran to the side of the sky stairway, standing there respectfully. Next, a few more batches of disciples came and were stopped at the bottom of the sky stairway. Like the 3 of them, they were stopped for no reason, and their hearts were extremely puzzled. But after all, it was Feng Yuan. Even if they had resentment in their hearts, they did not dare to show it. Not long after, Shangguan Fenglan brought Qin Feiyang and Mu Tianyang, and finally arrived at the sky stairway. As soon as she saw the situation at the top of the mountain, Shangguan Fenglan knew what was going on. And Feng Zijuan was also surprised in his heart. Why would Jiang Haoyin and Mu Tianyang be together with Shangguan Fenglan? Those disciples who were stopped at the bottom of the sky stairway were also stunned. And Feng Yuan, the moment he saw Qin Feiyang, a strong killing intent emerged in his eyes. Feeling Feng Yuan's killing intent, Feng Zihan's eyelids twitched, and he transmitted his voice, "Grandfather, Shangguan Fenglan is here. Calm down." It was fine if Feng Zihan did not say it, but when he said it, Feng Yuan's eyes immediately surged with hostility. Shangguan Fenglan brought Qin Feiyang and Mu Tianyang to land in front of the sky stairway, looked at those disciples and asked suspiciously, Feng Yuan, what are you doing? Lord Hallmaster, we did not do anything wrong. But for some reason, we were stopped here by Hallmaster Feng Yuan. As soon as Shangguan Fenglan spoke, those disciples were like grasping at straws, running to Shangguan Fenglan's side and chattering nonstop. Stopped for no reason? Shangguan Fenglan frowned. Feng Yuan said in a deep voice, Shangguan Fenglan, why are you with Jiang Haoyan and Mu Tianyang? Shangguan Fenglan was stunned and looked at Feng Yuan. What do you mean by this? Do I need to report to you who I'm with? Feng Yuan clenched his hands and shouted, Today, you must explain clearly. Shangguan Fenglan's eyes turned cold, and she said, Feng Yuan, don't go too far. I'm not a disciple of Nine Heavens Palace. You don't have the qualifications to control me. The dignified hall master of the law enforcement hall is actually with 2 drunk disciples. This doesn't make sense no matter how you look at it. Feng Yuan sneered. It has something to do with you? Get out of my way. Shangguan Fenglan took a step forward and looked straight at Feng Yuan, a bone-piercing sharpness in her eyes. Boom. Feng Yuan also directly released his aura, confronting Shangguan Fenglan. Feng Zihan was burning with anxiety and he bowed. Hall Master, please calm down. Calm down? Shangguan Fenglan smiled coldly. In Nine Heavens Palace, apart from the 2 palace masters, there are only 10 elders who dare to stop me like this. Moreover, Feng Yuan is only the hall master of the resource hall. Logically speaking, he doesn't have the authority to interrogate the disciples under him. Yes. We all know that the law enforcement hall has the authority to interrogate disciples. My grandfather is indeed in the wrong, but there is a reason for this. Please understand, Hall Master, Feng Zihan said. There is a reason for this? Shangguan Fenglan was suspicious. Yes. Feng Zihan nodded, pondered for a while and sighed. This matter is related to my little brother, Feng Zijuan. What do you mean? Shangguan Fenglan asked. Feng Zihan said, Zijuan was kidnapped. What? Feng Zijuan was kidnapped? When did this happen? Why is there no news at all? The disciples surrounding Shangguan Fenglan were all shocked. Shangguan Fenglan also revealed a look of disbelief, frowning. Isn't Feng Zijuan always in Nine Heavens Palace? How could he be kidnapped? Moreover, such a big matter. It's impossible for there to be no news at all. Feng Zihan turned to look at Feng Yuan and said, Grandfather, give me that letter. Feng Yuan stared at the drunk Qin Feiyang and said in a deep voice, There's no need to think. This matter must have something to do with him. Feng Zihan's face changed and secretly said, Grandfather, there's no evidence. Don't talk nonsense. Feng Yuan shouted, Other than Jiang Haoyan, who in Nine Heavens Palace has such guts? Who's calling me? Qin Feiyang suddenly quivered, raised his head and scanned the surroundings, his eyes full of confusion. Finally, he suddenly stared at Feng Zihan and laughed. Isn't this senior sister Zihan? Why have you come to Yulan Tower? Come, let's have a few drinks. Shangguan Fenglan's face darkened. Feng Zihan couldn't help but frown. Calling Mu Tianyang, quickly answer me. Where are you? It's not over yet. Why did you run away? Qin Feiyang called out. I'm behind you. Mu Tianyang grabbed onto Qin Feiyang's shoulder and rested his chin on Qin Feiyang's shoulder. He also looked at Feng Zihan with drunken eyes and said, Yes. It's senior sister Zihan. Fortunately. No, it's a pleasure to meet you. Do you want to have a few drinks? Wait, where are we? This doesn't seem to be the Yulan restaurant. Brother Jiang, you wouldn't have taken me to a brothel while I was drunk, right? Mu Tianyang hugged onto Qin Feiyang's arm and looked around in a drunken stupor, laughing extremely wretchedly. Brothel? Shangguan Fenglan turned to look at Qin Feiyang and Feng Zihan, her eyes extremely terrifying. What nonsense were they talking about? This was the Jutian Palace. How could they call it a brothel? The most important thing was that if this was a brothel, then wasn't she the same as a prostitute? The more she thought about it, the angrier she became. She raised her hand and slapped Qin Feiyang and Feng Zihan on the back of their heads. The two immediately lay on the ground, unconscious. Feng Zihan was also extremely speechless. How much wine did they have to drink to be like this? Chapter 2067. Looking at Feng Yuan and Qin Feiyang lying on the ground, he was about to go mad with anger. He hated Qin Feiyang to the bone. But now, he was drunk to this extent. What was going on? Feng Zihan calmed himself down and looked at Feng Yuan. Grandfather, now is not the time to act on impulse. Quickly take out the letter. Feng Yuan took a deep breath and took out the letter. Feng Zihan took it and handed it to Shangguan Fenglan with both hands. Shangguan Fenglan took the letter and read it carefully. The disciples behind her also stood on their tiptoes and looked at it curiously. He really was kidnapped, Shangguan Fenglan murmured. According to my grandfather, this letter was sent to the resource hall by someone. To be able to enter the resource hall to send a letter, it must be someone from our Empyrean Palace. Previously, my grandfather was invited to the west gate of Sky Dragon City to trade, but the two who kidnapped my brother went back on their word after receiving the white tiger blood essence. That's why my grandfather and I are here to check the disciples who came back, Feng Zihan explained. I see. Shangguan Fenglan sighed. I am the hall master of Empyrean Palace's law enforcement hall. I can't escape the blame for such a thing happening in Empyrean Palace, but you should have told me about it immediately. We couldn't do anything about it. It's written clearly that if anyone dares to spread it, they will be killed. Feng Zihan said. Understandable. Shangguan Fenglan nodded with a smile. But Zhang Haoyin and Qin Feiyang really have nothing to do with this matter. They have been in Yulan Pavilion since the evening and have never left my sight. Hall Master, may I ask why you were with them in Yulan Pavilion? Feng Zihan was suspicious. To tell you the truth, I was ordered by the First Elder to investigate their origins. And this time, I invited them to Yulan Pavilion to get them drunk so that they would tell the truth. But I didn't expect them to be so drunk. Shangguan Fenglan smiled bitterly. Feng Zihan asked, did they tell you where they came from? Yes. Shangguan Fenglan just nodded and didn't say anything else. She returned the letter to Feng Zihan. Then what are their origins? Feng Zihan was curious. Shangguan Fenglan raised her eyebrows and said, Zihan, as the first on the heaven list, you should know what to ask and what not to ask. Disciple knows his mistake. Feng Zihan hurriedly bowed. I'm fine. Shangguan Fenglan waved her hand. She looked at Feng Yuan and said, don't worry. I will also help to deal with Feng Zijuan's matter. What help? This is the responsibility of the Law Enforcement Hall, Feng Yuan said furiously. I don't deny it, but you didn't tell me right away. I can completely ignore a situation like this. Shangguan Fenglan snorted. You, Feng Yuan was furious. Grandfather, Feng Zihan scolded and thought to himself, I know you're anxious, but you can't treat Shangguan Fenglan with such an attitude. Feng Yuan clenched his fists. He still felt that this matter had something to do with Qin Feiyang, but he couldn't do anything without evidence. Shangguan Fenglan didn't say anything more to Feng Yuan. She grabbed Qin Feiyang and looked at Feng Zihan and said, you can ask, but don't kill the innocent. After I send them back, I'll send someone to help you. Yes. Feng Zihan responded respectfully. Persuade your grandfather again. After Shangguan Fenglan finished speaking, she glanced at the motionless white-haired old man who was sitting cross-legged beside the stairway to heaven. Then, she led Qin Feiyang and the other two to pass by Feng Yuan and quickly disappeared up the stairway to heaven. You guys go back too. Feng Zijuan looked at the disciples who were stopped before. Thank you, Senior Sister Zihan. The group of people said gratefully and swarmed up the stairway to heaven. Feng Yuan turned to look at Shangguan Fenglan and said in a deep voice, Zihan, go and keep an eye on Zhang Haoyin for me. Grandfather, Shangguan Fenglan has already testified. Why are you still suspecting them? Feng Zihan frowned. Feng Yuan said gloomily, who knows if Shangguan Fenglan is with them? Grandfather. Feng Zihan's expression changed. How could he say such a thing? Whoosh. Just as Feng Yuan's voice fell, the motionless white-haired old man suddenly opened his eyes and two cold lights surged out. Whether it was Feng Zihan or Feng Yuan, they felt as if they had fallen into an ice cellar and couldn't help but feel cold all over. Feng Zihan hurried to the white-haired old man and bowed. "Senior, my grandfather didn't do it on purpose. Please don't be angry." The white-haired old man glanced at Feng Zihan, and the cold light in his eyes gradually dissipated. He then slowly closed his eyes. Feng Zihan heaved a sigh of relief. Feng Yuan was also scared. The disciples of Nine Heavens Palace basically didn't know this old man's identity and thought that he was purely a gatekeeper. But Feng Yuan, as the hall master of the resource hall, knew this old man's identity like the back of his hand. It could be said that, if this old man made a move, even the first elder wouldn't dare to stop him. First Sacred Peak. Cave Abode Number 1. After Shangguan Fenglan entered the cave abode, she threw Qin Feiyang and Mu Tianyang to the ground. The two people who were originally unconscious immediately jumped up with a wail of anguish. The drunkenness on their faces had also disappeared. Actually, they weren't drunk at all. They were just pretending. Qin Feiyang rubbed his butt and said, "Lord Hall Master, do you want to take our lives? No matter what, they are perfect war gods. Will they die from a fall?" Shangguan Fenglan rolled her eyes, then sized up the two of them and said, "I found that you guys really have a talent for acting." "You flatter me." Qin Feiyang and Mu Tianyang looked at each other and hurriedly smiled. "Are you guys acting with me too?" Shangguan Fenglan looked at the two of them with ill intentions. "No, no." The two of them waved their hands repeatedly, extremely terrified. "It's best if you don't." Shangguan Fenglan snorted coldly and said, "I'll go arrange it. You guys should also hurry up and prepare. When I come back, I'll start refining pills." "You really want to send someone to assist Feng Yuan?" Qin Feiyang was surprised. "I still have to do it on the surface. After all, my law enforcement hall exists to maintain the order of the Nine Heavens Palace." After Shangguan Fenglan finished speaking, she turned around and walked out quickly. After Shangguan Fenglan left, Mu Tianyang waved his hand and closed the cave's stone door. He smiled and said, "I really didn't expect it to go so smoothly." Qin Feiyang said, "This is also because of the Black Tortoise realm." "That's true." Mu Tianyang nodded and reminded, "Then Feng Zijuan, you must remember to get rid of him." "I know. When the time comes, I will send the corpse to Feng Yuan." Qin Feiyang sneered. Ugh. Mu Tianyang was stunned. What a cruel guy. Dong. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. So fast? The two of them looked at each other and then opened the stone door. They were immediately stunned. They originally thought it was Shangguan Fenglan, but it turned out to be a young man standing at the door. "Brother Jiang." The young man raised his head and looked at Qin Feiyang. His face was full of stubble and his hair was messy. There was also a smell of alcohol on his body, mixed with a stench. His expression was also extremely haggard. Qin Feiyang glanced at the young man and said with a faint smile, "Come in." The young man was Gong Zifeng. Gong Zifeng walked into the cave and closed the stone door behind him. Qin Feiyang frowned and said, "How long has it been since you took a bath?" Gong Zifeng was stunned. He lowered his head and looked at himself. He smiled bitterly and said, "I've embarrassed myself in front of Brother Jiang." Then, he looked at Mu Tianyang and said, "Brother Mu is also here." Mu Tianyang nodded. Qin Feiyang pointed to the seat and said, "Sit." "No need." Gong Zifeng shook his head and glanced at Mu Tianyang. He lowered his head and pondered. Qin Feiyang said, "What do you want to know?" After a long time, Gong Zifeng raised his head and looked at Qin Feiyang, saying, "Is it convenient to talk?" "Just say it." Qin Feiyang said. Gong Zifeng said, "I'm here to ask if Feng Zijuan's kidnapping has anything to do with Brother Jiang." Qin Feiyang was not surprised at all, because he really couldn't think of any other reason why Gong Zifeng came to him. This person's position is not stable. We can't tell him. Mu Tianyang transmitted his voice. "I know." Qin Feiyang secretly responded. He looked at Gong Zifeng and said, "If I say that it has something to do with me, will you tell your grandfather?" "I won't." Gong Zifeng shook his head without hesitation. "Why?" Qin Feiyang was surprised. "I hate them. Right now, I wish I could kill them with my own hands." Gong Zifeng clenched his hands tightly, his face full of resentment. "Wait, didn't you plead for Feng Wenhai last time?" Why did you suddenly become like this? Qin Feiyong was puzzled. Of course, he knew the reason, but he wanted Gong Zifeng to say it himself. Let's not talk about it. In short, I hate the Feng family. I hate Feng Yuan. Gong Zifeng knelt on the ground with a thud. Qin Feiyong and Gong Zifeng looked at each other and asked, "What do you mean by this?" Gong Zifeng said, "I want to ask Brother Jiang to help me kill Feng Yuan and Feng Wenhai." Qin Feiyong was still somewhat unable to adapt to Gong Zifeng's sudden change. Mu Tianyang pondered for a while and said secretly, "If his position is firm enough, then we can help him. After all, having him as a spy is also beneficial to us." Qin Feiyong transmitted his voice, "Of course, I know this. But to be honest, I can't really trust this person." Mu Tianyang said, "In that case, let's test him and let him kill Feng Zijuan." Kill Feng Zijuan. Qin Feiyong's eyes flickered as he looked at Gong Zifeng and said, "How about this? We still have some things to do. You can go back now and come find me tomorrow night." "Okay." Gong Zifeng nodded and smiled at Mu Tianyang before turning to leave. Mu Tianyang shook his head and sighed. "To be honest, I feel a little sorry for him. What can we do? Blame Feng Yuan? Actually, it's not his fault. After all, for a rich and powerful family like the Feng family, letting a prostitute into the family is indeed a disgrace. Blame Gong Zifeng's mother? Not really. Because she became a prostitute for the sake of living, for the sake of survival. If you really want to blame someone, you can only blame Feng Wenhai, an irresponsible man, a cold-blooded beast. Even if he doesn't approve, he shouldn't have killed Gong Zifeng's mother." Qin Feiyong said. "Irresponsible." Mu Tianyang muttered as if he was immersed in his memories. "I don't even have the chance to be responsible for a woman. This person clearly has her, but he doesn't cherish her at all. He really deserves to be killed." Qin Feiyong was stunned. He looked at Mu Tianyang and said, "I've always wanted to ask you a question." "What question?" Mu Tianyang was suspicious. Qin Feiyong frowned and said, "Are you sincere to Xinmei?" "Nonsense. I can even kneel down for her. How can I not be sincere?" Mu Tianyang said. "Then why do you like her?" Qin Feiyong was curious. Mu Tianyang said, "Because she looks very much like a woman in the past." "In the past?" Qin Feiyong was stunned. "Yes. Back then, when I was still the emperor of the Tianyang Empire, I had a harem of 3,000 women, each of whom was devastatingly beautiful, but the one I liked the most was a maid who served me. She was very sensible and very good at comforting people. Every time I encountered trouble, she was the one who counseled me. Slowly, I fell in love with her. At that time, I wanted to let her enter the harem several times, give her a status, and be with me openly. But she was unwilling. She said that there was too much intrigue in the harem, and she didn't like that kind of life. As long as she could accompany me, she would be satisfied. I didn't force her. That was the best period of my life, but it didn't last long. Then one day, she left the imperial palace to go home to visit her family. Unfortunately, she was killed on the way." Mu Tianyang sighed. Qin Feiyong said in surprise, "I didn't expect a tyrant like you to have such a gentle side." "In this world, who doesn't have a gentle side?" Mu Tianyang shook his head and said with a smile. Qin Feiyong said, "So when you saw Xinmei, you fell in love with her?" "Yes." Mu Tianyang nodded. Qin Feiyong said, "Then you must hate me very much now." "Of course. If it weren't for you and the inner demons, she wouldn't have died," Mu Tianyang said, a cold light flashing in his eyes. Qin Feiyong sneered, "But you have to know that if it weren't for me, you would have been smashed to pieces." "Yes. The fact that you saved me will never be erased. But that's that. I won't let Xinmei's death go just like that," Mu Tianyang said. Qin Feiyong said indifferently, "As long as you don't target the people around me, I don't care how you treat me. Don't worry, I'm not that despicable. But it's hard to say about Guosweki." Mu Tianyang smiled mockingly. "If anyone dares to hurt the people around me, I will send them to hell." Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed with killing intent. Mu Tianyang looked at him deeply and said, "Let's not talk about this anymore. Hurry up and take out the furnace and fire. Get ready to start refining." Qin Feiyang nodded, entered the castle, and carefully studied the refining process and details of the four symbols infinite divine pill. Then, he left the castle with the netherworld devil flame and the azure phoenix cauldron and entered the refining room. Open the furnace and refine the pills, Mu Tianyang urged somewhat anxiously. Not waiting for Shangguan Fenglan, Qin Feiyang was taken aback and asked, "Why wait for her?" Mu Tianyang pursed his lips. "I don't dare." She said to wait for her. If she comes back and sees that we have refined the pill, she will definitely fly into a rage. I can't bear the anger of this woman. Qin Feiyang shook his head. When did you, Qin Feiyang, get scared? Mu Tianyang looked at Qin Feiyang in surprise, as if he had discovered a new continent. People under the eaves have to bow their heads. Let's wait for her to come back. Qin Feiyang sighed, took out 4 kinds of blood essence and the infinite divine fruit, and placed them one by one on the refining table. About half an hour passed. Shangguan Fenglan finally came to the cave residence. Qin Feiyang closed the stone door, stood in front of the furnace, and closed his eyes. Shangguan Fenglan glanced at Qin Feiyang, then looked at Mu Tianyang and said, "He really knows how to refine pills?" "Of course. He is an alchemy genius in our area," Mu Tianyang said proudly. "An alchemy genius? I really can't tell." Shangguan Fenglan shook her head and asked, "What about you?" "Me?" Mu Tianyang was taken aback and said with a smile. A moment later, Qin Feiyang slowly opened his eyes, and his whole person had entered the state of heart as still as water. Whoosh! With a wave of his hand, a wave of mind power emerged. What? This mind power? Shangguan Fenglan was immediately dumbfounded. Mu Tianyang was also a little surprised and said to himself, his mind power has reached at least level 50 or 60. Level 50 or 60 mind power. Shangguan Fenglan was shocked. Even in the Nine Heavens Palace, it was rare to see someone with such high mental strength. Chapter 2068. She had really underestimated this person. Not only was he smart, his talent was terrifying. Even his mental strength was terrifying. Even in Jotian Palace, he would be a monstrous figure. Suddenly, Shangguan Fenglan seemed to have thought of something. She looked at Mu Tianyang and asked, "Do you know what's going on with his cultivation?" "Cultivation?" Mu Tianyang was stunned. "I remember when he first entered Jotian Palace, he was only a low-level war god. But how long has it been? He actually broke through to perfect war god. And Jiang Rushuang, she also broke through to advanced war god at an outrageous speed," Shangguan Fenglan said. "So that's what you're asking." Mu Tianyang nodded in realization and laughed secretly. "This question? I'll let him answer you personally later." Shangguan Fenglan raised her eyebrows, looking extremely displeased. Mu Tianyang didn't say anything else and focused on Qin Feiyang. Shangguan Fenglan asked suspiciously, "Aren't you going to help?" "What can I help with?" Mu Tianyang was puzzled. "These pills were jointly researched by you. Without your help, can he refine them?" Shangguan Fenglan asked. "No need. I believe he can handle it alone." Mu Tianyang smiled secretly. While the two were talking, Qin Feiyang had already awakened the nether devil flame. The bottom of the azure phoenix cauldron was burning red. Qin Feiyang first used his mental strength to roll up a Wuji immortal fruit and put it into the cauldron. Under the high temperature, the Wuji immortal fruit gradually melted. Not long after, a drop of spirit liquid the size of a pellet appeared. It was crystal clear and flickered with a hazy glow. Among them, there was a strong fruity fragrance. Following closely, after adjusting the temperature, Qin Feiyang began to refine the blood essence of the 4 divine beasts one by one. "It's that simple?" Shangguan Fenglan was surprised. "Simple?" Mu Tianyang was stunned and shook his head speechlessly. "Look at his forehead." Shangguan Fenglan looked at Qin Feiyang's forehead and found that it was already drenched in sweat. Mu Tianyang curiously transmitted his voice. "Dare I ask the hall master, do you know how to refine pills?" Shangguan Fenglan shook her head. "No wonder." Mu Tianyang mumbled. This was what a layman was saying. Concocting pills looked very simple. You just have to throw the medicinal ingredients into the pill furnace and extract the spiritual liquid to condense it into a pill. But in fact, whether it was the details, the steps, the heat, or the mentality, there could not be the slightest mistake. Especially for pills like the Four Symbols Infinite Divine Pellet, the slightest mistake would cause it to be scrapped or even explode. Therefore, when refining this kind of pill, only the person who refined it would know how hard and how difficult it was. As for Qin Feiyang, the reason why he was able to refine the spiritual liquid so smoothly was that he had already memorized the pill recipe. The pill formulas in the pill codex were not only comprehensive, they were even more detailed and specific than the pill formulas that were circulated outside. It was no exaggeration to say that even an alchemist with poor aptitude could become a genius in alchemy after obtaining the alchemy scripture. On the other hand, as for refining pills, Qin Feiyang had long been practiced to the point of perfection. Just what level of perfection had he reached? It could be said that, now that he had refined the pill once, he could refine it again even with his eyes closed in the future. Moreover, he was also very familiar with the nether devil flame. An alchemist who wanted to refine a good pill not only needed a strong mental force and a high-level pill furnace, but also had to be one with the pill fire. And Qin Feiyang had been using the nether devil flame to refine pills all these years. Over the years, he had already formed an inseparable bond with the nether devil flame. It was as if it was a part of his body. More importantly, it was his state of mind. His state of mind was stable enough. When refining pills, as long as no one deliberately disturbed him, he would not be distracted at all. About a moment later, the blood essence of the four divine beasts had also been refined, and now there was not the slightest smell of blood. Not only was there no smell of blood, but there was also a delicate fragrance. Moreover, there was no innate murderous aura and hostility of fierce beasts. It looked like four blood diamonds, blooming with brilliant brilliance. The next step was to fuse the spiritual liquid. He was very careful. After all, whether it was the everlasting divine fruit or the blood essence of the four divine beasts, they were all very difficult to find. If it was accidentally scrapped, it would be a huge loss. Soon, a blood-red light swept out of the Qinghuan cauldron like lightning. Qin Feiyang ignored the sweat on his forehead and hurriedly reached out to grab it. Mu Tianyang and Shangguan Fenglan were also at the same time, quickly walking to Qin Feiyang's side. Qin Feiyang glanced at the two of them and slowly opened his hand. A medicinal pill the size of a finger immediately appeared. The pill was blood-red in color. The 9 pill patterns were like 9 halos, emitting a dazzling divine light. What? 9 pill patterns? Shangguan Fenglan was stunned. Mu Tianyang's face was full of ecstasy. The Four Symbols Everlasting Divine Pill was the same as the 9 Transformation Dragon Blood Pill. The more pill patterns there were, the higher the success rate. In other words, 9 pill patterns, there was a full 90% success rate. With such a high success rate, unless one was extremely unlucky, it was impossible to fail. Let me try first? Mu Tianyang looked at Qin Feiyang and asked. His heart was very eager. Okay. Qin Feiyang nodded and threw the pill to Mu Tianyang. Mu Tianyang grabbed the pill and directly put it into his mouth without saying a word. Immediately, a majestic energy exploded in his body like a volcanic eruption. It came quickly and fiercely. Caught off guard, Mu Tianyang couldn't help but wail. The skin on his body was cracked and blood was flowing out. This was a feeling he had never felt before. That majestic feeling was like an avalanche that drowned him in an instant. He didn't even have time to prepare. What? When Qin Feiyang saw this scene, he also turned pale on the spot. The energy of this Four Symbols Infinite Divine Pellet was a little too terrifying. Even the skin of a perfect war god could crack. Fortunately, he didn't take this pill just now. If not, the purple gold dragon blood would be exposed to Shangguan Fenglan's eyes without any preparation. Shangguan Fenglan also jumped in fright. She condensed a divine power enchantment and imprisoned Mu Tianyang. The movement couldn't be too big, otherwise it would arouse the suspicion of people with ulterior motives. Boom. At the same time, Mu Tianyang's aura was also rising crazily with an uncontrollable momentum. His aura is becoming stronger again? Could it be that this pill can really let a war god break through his cultivation? Shangguan Fenglan stared at Mu Tianyang with anticipation in her eyes. Qin Feiyong was the same. Although he had long known about the existence of the four symbols everlasting divine pill, this was the first time he had seen someone take it with his own eyes. He wanted to know if this pill had such a heaven-defying effect. His aura continued to soar, and the cracks on Mu Tianyang's skin also became more and more, bigger and bigger. At this moment, he had become a bloody man, his face full of pain. The ground was also soaked in blood. Looking at Mu Tianyang's miserable appearance, Shangguan Fenglan turned her head to look at Qin Feiyong and asked worriedly, "Zhang Haoyan, will this kind of pill that you guys are researching really work?" Qin Feiyong thought for a moment and said, "It should work." Should? Shangguan Fenglan was stunned. Such a vague answer. Didn't it mean that this kid didn't have full confidence at all? If he didn't have full confidence, then wasn't this Mu Tianyang using his life to test the pill? In order to research the pill, he really didn't care about his life. Normally, in this kind of situation, if it was anyone else, they would definitely first find someone else or a fierce beast to test the pill. They were really two out-and-out lunatics. But she didn't know that Qin Feiyong and Mu Tianyang weren't testing the pill at all. The four symbols infinite divine pill could originally allow a war god to break through a small realm. It was just that there was a possibility of failure. Rumble. Mu Tianyang's aura had already soared to the peak of perfect war god, only one step away from perfect war god. However, it was also at this moment that Mu Tianyang's skyrocketing aura came to an abrupt stop. The cracks on his skin, the pain on his face, also slowly calmed down. Qin Feiyong was shocked. Mu Tianyang also froze on the spot. It actually failed? This was 9 pill patterns. The success rate was as high as 90%, and it actually failed? Brother Qin. It seems that I'm that kind of unlucky person. Mu Tianyang secretly smiled bitterly. Qin Feiyong pursed his lips and secretly said, "If you still fail with a 90% chance, then it's not bad luck, it's bad character." Mu Tianyang helplessly took out a healing pill, threw it into his mouth, and said, "Refine another one? We agreed beforehand, you only need 3. Now that you've taken one, there are only 2 left." Qin Feiyong said. Mu Tianyang looked at Qin Feiyong in shock and secretly said, "You're a man. Do you have to be so stingy?" "It's not a matter of being stingy. It's a principle. Since we've already agreed beforehand, then naturally, we have to keep our promise," Qin Feiyong said indifferently. Mu Tianyang was extremely angry, but he quickly compromised, and with a pleading tone he said, "Just give me one more. I promise if I fail again, I won't ask you for it." Qin Feiyong was a little hesitant. "You see, we've been together for so long. I've never begged you so humbly," Mu Tianyang secretly said. "All right, looking at your pitiful look, I'll give you one more, but it won't happen again," Qin Feiyong said. "It won't happen again. It won't happen again," Mu Tianyang said repeatedly, overjoyed. Shangguan Fenglan looked at the two and frowned. "What are you guys doing in secret? Is there anything that I can't know?" No. I'm just comforting him in secret." Qin Feiyong quickly waved his hand. Yes. Mu Tianyang also nodded repeatedly. Looking at the expressions of the two, Shangguan Fenglan sneered. This was obviously an excuse to brush her off. She looked at the two and asked, "Do you want to continue?" "Of course," Qin Feiyong said without hesitation. "That's right. We're not the kind of people who give up halfway." Mu Tianyang followed with a determined light in his eyes. "All right, then I'll see if you can succeed." After Shangguan Fenglan finished speaking, she retreated to the side. There was a hint of ridicule in her eyes, as if she was mocking Qin Feiyong for being too naive. Qin Feiyong and Mu Tianyang didn't notice. But even if they did, with their current temperament, they wouldn't care. Qin Feiyong turned and walked to the front of the pill furnace, took out another Wuji divine fruit and 4 drops of essence blood. The same process, the same refining method. A moment later, the second Wuji divine pill was out. Qin Feiyong grabbed the pill and handed it to Mu Tianyang. But at this time, Mu Tianyang hesitated, looked at Qin Feiyong and said, "Why don't you give it a try?" "Do I still need to answer that?" "It's definitely impossible." Unless you send Shangguan Fenglan away. Qin Feiyang thought. Mu Tianyang gritted his teeth, grabbed the Wuji divine pill and said, I don't believe that I'm really so unlucky. After saying that, he stuffed it into his mouth. That familiar energy, that familiar pain, once again drowned him. This feeling was even more uncomfortable than opening the door of potential. His aura was the same as before, soaring again. But, just as he was about to break through the bottleneck and step into the perfect war god, his soaring aura suddenly stopped. Mu Tianyang's body immediately stiffened, and his face became extremely ugly. This, even Qin Feiyang could no longer remain calm. The first failure could be attributed to bad luck, but after failing twice in a row, he had to seriously think about this problem. Could it be that he remembered the pill recipe wrongly? Who did I offend? I actually failed twice? After Mu Tianyang came back to his senses, he immediately roared angrily, and his face was ashen. Although he had done many outrageous things in the past, his character shouldn't be so bad, right? Again. He looked at Qin Feiyang and shouted. After failing twice in a row, his stubborn temper rose. If he didn't succeed today, he wouldn't give up. Don't worry. I'll go take a look at the pill recipe again. Could there be a problem somewhere? Qin Feiyang secretly said and entered the ancient castle. Although there weren't many spatial divine items in the ancient world, they weren't very rare either, so Shangguan Fenglan didn't think too much about it. However, Mu Tianyang's consecutive failures made her even more convinced of her inner thoughts. It was impossible for the two of them to research such a heaven-defying pill. I think it's better to forget about it first. Don't waste the Wuji divine fruit and blood essence. Shangguan Fenglan looked at Mu Tianyang and kindly advised. No, I must succeed today. Mu Tianyang clenched his hands tightly together. So what if his character was bad? If one pill wasn't enough, then two. If two wasn't enough, then three. He didn't believe that he would continue to be so unlucky. After a while, Qin Feiyang appeared out of thin air. How is it? Mu Tianyang secretly asked. There was no problem with the two four symbols infinite divine pills that I refined earlier, but why did I fail one after another? Qin Feiyang furrowed his brows. This was truly strange. Suddenly, a trace of ridicule appeared in his eyes as he sent a sound transmission to Mu Tianyang. Could it be that you've done too many immoral things in the past, so today, the heavens are deliberately torturing you? The corner of Mu Tianyang's mouth twitched and said, Hurry up and refine it. Let me kindly remind you that you only have two left. Qin Feiyang secretly said, I know, I don't need you to remind me. Mu Tianyang was extremely angry. If Qin Feiyang wasn't here to watch the joke, he wouldn't be so angry. But it just had to happen in front of Qin Feiyang. To him, this was like a humiliation. It made him very embarrassed and lose face. Chapter 2069. Qin Feiyang shook his head and laughed. He took out the herbs and started refining pills. Not long after, the third four symbols infinite divine pill was born. Mu Tianyang stepped forward, grabbed the pill, and stuffed it into his mouth. Damn God. If you have the ability, continue to torture me? He roared secretly and sat cross-legged on the ground. Terrifying energy crazily attacked his physical body. Fresh blood flowed on the ground like a stream. Boom. Finally, his aura once again reached the peak of a perfect war god. At this moment, he was terrified again. God, can you stop tormenting me? I beg you. I don't want to be a joke in the future. If he couldn't succeed with 3 pills in a row, Qin Feiyang would probably laugh his head off. It seemed that his pleading was useful. His aura didn't stop and continued to soar. Boom. All of a sudden, a muffled sound exploded in Mu Tianyang's body, as if some kind of shackle had been broken. After this loud sound, an even more terrifying aura rushed out from his body. Perfect war god. Finally, success. Feeling his current cultivation, he couldn't help but want to cry. This damn god was deliberately tormenting him. Qin Feiyang also had a look of disdain. This person's character was so bad that he had no friends. However, at this moment, Shangguan Fenglan's face was full of shock. It could actually help a war god break through his cultivation? This was unbelievable. They could even research such pills. How amazing was the potential of these two people? Qin Feiyang looked at Shangguan Fenglan and said with a smile, Lord Temple Master, do you have anything to say now? Shangguan Fenglan glanced at Qin Feiyang and then at Mu Tianyang. She said lightly, don't be too proud. There are many people in this world who are more capable than you. I don't deny that. But may I ask, who can research such pills? Qin Feiyang asked with a smile. Shangguan Fenglan was speechless for a moment. Qin Feiyang knew when to stop. He smiled and said, you can tell Shangguan Xiao now and ask her to seriously consider the deal with us. What happened between the two of you has nothing to do with me. I just want to know, how did your cultivations improve so quickly? Shangguan Fenglan said. To be honest, I was already a perfect war god before the exam. Qin Feiyang said. Shangguan Fenglan was stunned. Actually, I just wanted to keep a low profile. That's why I hid some of my cultivation base. But when I entered the Nine Heavens Palace, I realized that there were plenty of people stronger than me. There was no need for me to hide my cultivation. Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. Shangguan Fenglan observed Qin Feiyang's expression and couldn't find any trace of pretense. Thinking about it again, it seemed that this was the only explanation that made sense. After all, no matter how heaven-defying one's talent was, it was impossible to break through two minor realms consecutively in such a short time. All right, you guys go ahead. Also, try to keep a low profile in the future. Shangguan Fenglan said. Yes. Wait. No. If we keep a low profile, how can we deal with Feng Yuan? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Shangguan Fenglan's face darkened. She said angrily, can you find a reason to refute everything I say? No. Don't be angry. How about this? Except for dealing with Feng Yuan, we will try not to make trouble. Qin Feiyang saw that the situation was not good and quickly said with a smile, not try, but absolutely not allowed. Shangguan Fenglan said, Okay. Qin Feiyang nodded repeatedly. Shangguan Fenglan glared at Qin Feiyang fiercely, then turned and left in a huff. Qin Feiyang touched his nose and looked at Shangguan Fenglan's back, his eyes flickering. After Shangguan Fenglan left the cave, Qin Feiyang waved his hand and the stone door closed. Then he glanced at Mu Tianyang, who was stabilizing his realm, took out 2 sets of medicinal materials, and continued to refine the 4 symbols infinite divine pill. Soon, 2 pills came out of the furnace. Mu Tianyang also stood up from the ground and looked at Qin Feiyang with some dissatisfaction. He snorted coldly and said, I'd like to see if you can succeed in one try. Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned and frowned. My character shouldn't be as bad as yours. Whether it's bad or not, how will you know if you don't try? Mu Tianyang was very unhappy now. Qin Feiyang laughed and threw one of the 4 symbols infinite divine pills to Mu Tianyang. Mu Tianyang caught it in his hand, looked down, and then looked at Qin Feiyang, as if he had something to say. Stop. Don't say anything. Qin Feiyang quickly stretched out his hand. Mu Tianyang was angry and said, I haven't even opened my mouth, and you know what I'm going to say? Don't I know you? Don't you just want me to give you a few more pills? Qin Feiyang sneered. Mu Tianyang was stunned and smiled embarrassedly. It seems that the person who knows me best is you. Stop flattering. I've already given you 1 more pill. Don't even think about the rest. Qin Feiyang coldly said. Then, he placed the 4 symbols everlasting divine pellet into his mouth. Mu Tianyang shook his head helplessly and condensed a divine power barrier, enveloping Qin Feiyang inside. Qin Feiyang looked at the divine power barrier and muttered, It's better to go to the Black Tortoise world, because Mu Tianyang was 1 small realm higher than him. Mu Tianyang's divine power barrier might not be able to seal his aura. Finished. He waved his hand and brought Mu Tianyang with him, descending directly into the sky above the Devil's Land. Boom. Immediately, a terrifying aura rushed out from his body. Just like Mu Tianyang before, the energy of the 4 symbols infinite divine pill almost burst his body. Purple gold dragon blood poured down like a waterfall, dyeing the sky red. After a while, boom, his aura smoothly broke through to the peak of the perfect war god realm. But there were no signs of failure. It soared crazily all the way to the perfect war god realm. Mu Tianyang looked at Qin Feiyang in a daze. He actually succeeded in breaking through in one go? This luck really made people jealous. I already said, this is not a matter of luck, it's a matter of character. Thus, in the future, it's best that you do less outrageous things. Even if it's not for yourself, it's best that you accumulate more virtue for your descendants. Qin Feiyang opened his eyes, looked at Mu Tianyang, and laughed mockingly. Mu Tianyang's face was full of disdain, and said, "Cultivation, we have already broken through. The next step is to open the door of potential. Do you have the herbs for the Dragon Soul Primordial Spirit Pill? You still have the nerve to talk about this? I was the one who set my eyes on that black dragon first," Qin Feiyang said. "It has something to do with me?" Mu Tianyang asked back. "All right, it has nothing to do with you. Then I want to see who will help you refine the Dragon Soul Primordial Spirit Pill," Qin Feiyang said. Mu Tianyang's expression froze, and said with a smile, let's talk. I only have one dragon soul. I definitely can't give it to you. But I found 2 dragon god flowers. I can give you one." Qin Feiyang was stunned and quickly said, "Don't fool me. Why would I fool you?" Mu Tianyang rolled his eyes, took out a palm-sized jade box from the universe ring, and threw it to Qin Feiyang and said, "See for yourself." Qin Feiyang opened the jade box suspiciously, and his eyes suddenly lit up. Inside the jade box, there was a small purple flower lying quietly. It was about half the size of a baby's fist, and there were a total of 12 small petals. The shape was very similar to a hibiscus, and each small petal was emitting a hazy divine light, looking very beautiful. "It's really the flower of the dragon god," Qin Feiyang murmured, looked up at Mu Tianyang and asked, "Where did you find this?" Mu Tianyang said, "I got it by accident when I looted the treasure vaults of a few big families." Qin Feiyang smiled. "It seems that sometimes there are some benefits to doing some evil things." Mu Tianyang raised his eyebrows and said, "Why do I feel like you're scolding me?" No. This time, I definitely don't mean to scold you. I'm praising you." Qin Feiyang waved his hand and said with a smile, "Since it's for me, then I won't stand on ceremony. Thank you." You're welcome. Mu Tianyang laughed. Qin Feiyang looked at the smile on Mu Tianyang's face and suddenly felt uneasy. This Mu Tianyang, he knew too well. It was impossible for him to be so kind-hearted. Aren't I still short of the primordial spirit lotus? Help me think of a way. Mu Tianyang smiled. Sure enough, Qin Feiyang muttered. For a person who only cared about profits, giving others things must have some ulterior motives. A man's words carry enormous weight. Since you said you'll accept it, you can't go back on your words, Mu Tianyang said. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes, pondered for a while and said, "I'll go out and wash the blood stains on my body first." "I'll go too," Mu Tianyang said. Qin Feiyang released his perception, found a pool, and descended above the pool with Mu Tianyang. The two jumped directly into the pool, a chill in their hearts. Mu Tianyang found a stone, lay in the water, looked at the night sky and sighed. "I didn't expect that we would cooperate again. I didn't want to cooperate with you at all." Qin Feiyang also sat on a stone, looked at Mu Tianyang, and said lightly while washing the blood stains on his body, "Don't be so heartless. Thinking back, except for the last time in the miracle, we have always been like enemies, like friends, but not like enemies. In fact, I personally think that you and I are quite fated." Mu Tianyang smiled. "Even if we are fated, it's an ill-fated relationship," Qin Feiyang said lightly. Mu Tianyang shook his head and smiled, then fell silent, enjoying the rare peace. Qin Feiyang looked at Mu Tianyang, and also leaned on the edge of the pool, looking at the night sky without saying a word. Time flew. The sun rose slowly from the horizon. Qin Feiyang let out a long breath, jumped out of the pool, and changed into clean clothes, then looked at Mu Tianyang and said, "It's morning, don't lie down, get up and contact Shang Wenqiu." "I didn't establish a contract with her." Mu Tianyang shook his head, and with a wave of his hand, Mu Qing appeared on the shore out of thin air. Mu Tianyang took out the four symbols infinite divine elixir from the interspatial ring, threw it to Mu Qing, and said, "This elixir is for you, and contact Shangguan Qiu." "Thank you, ancestor." Mu Qing took the four symbols infinite divine elixir, her face full of gratitude, and then took out the image crystal. Chapter 2070. Buzz. Soon, Shangguan Qiu's virtual shadow appeared. She looked at Mu Qing and said, "Don't tell me you've already succeeded? It depends on our cultivation." When Mu Qing sent the message, Mu Tianyang left the pool and put on his clothes. He walked to Mu Qing and released his aura. A perfect realm of war. Shangguan Qiu's eyes trembled. She asked, "Where's Zhang Haoyin?" Hearing this, Qin Feiyang also walked to Mu Tianyang's side and released his aura. "He's also a perfect realm of war." Shangguan Qiu murmured in disbelief. Qin Feiyang said calmly, "Your sister saw it with her own eyes last night. You can ask her if you don't believe me." "I believe you. Of course." Shangguan Qiu came back to her senses and nodded. Qin Feiyang smiled. "Let's talk." Mu Tianyang consciously retreated to the side and motioned for Mu Qing not to interrupt. He knew he was not as good as Qin Feiyang when it came to negotiation. "Of course we'll talk. Why don't we go to the Yulan Pavilion and have a good talk?" Shangguan Qiu said. "There's no need to go through so much trouble. Let's talk like this." Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. "All right, then we'll follow the old rules. The treasure pavilion will provide the herbs, and you'll be in charge of refining it. We'll pay you." Shangguan Qiu said. An elixir that could help a god of war break through to the next realm would definitely cause an uproar. "Pay us?" Qin Feiyang murmured and smiled. The four symbols infinite divine elixir is different from the Juku yellow dragon elixir and the ninefold dragon blood elixir. So it's called the four symbols infinite divine elixir. Shangguan Qiu murmured and nodded. "I know. In terms of value, the Juku yellow dragon elixir and the ninefold dragon blood elixir can't be compared to the four symbols infinite divine elixir." Qin Feiyang said, "Since you know that, do you think you can get rid of us with a little payment?" "What do you want?" Shangguan Qiu asked. She knew it wouldn't be that easy. 50-50. For example, if a four symbols infinite divine pill is auctioned for 100,000 soul stones, your treasure pavilion will get 50,000 soul stones, and we'll get 50,000 soul stones. Qin Feiyang said. "This," Shangguan Qiu frowned and said angrily, "isn't your request a little too much? The herbs are all provided by the treasure pavilion. But the pills were refined by us. You have the herbs, but without our help, what's the use?" Qin Feiyang said. Shangguan Qiu continued, "But the auction is organized by the treasure pavilion, and you want to split the profits 50-50. Isn't that a little too overbearing? Since you don't agree, then forget it. I'll go find the Great Elder. I believe that he will definitely be interested in the four symbols infinite divine pellet. As for the everlasting divine fruit and the blood essence of the four divine beasts, I also believe that other than your treasure pavilion, there should be quite a few treasures in the resource hall. Even if we don't have it, Nine Heavens Palace will definitely be able to get it." Qin Feiyang said lightly. Shangguan Qiu was annoyed. He was obviously threatening her. If she didn't agree to split the profits 50-50, she would have to work with the Great Elder. If she really worked with the Great Elder, the treasure pavilion would suffer a great loss. Is there really no room for negotiation? 50-60 is fine too. After all, the treasure pavilion has contributed more than you. Shangguan Qiu asked. Judging from her tone, she had already compromised. Qin Feiyang said, "If I take 60 and you take 40, then I have no objections." "You wish." Shangguan Qiu's face was full of disdain. After pondering for a while, she gritted her teeth and said, "Fine, 50-50 it is, but I have a request." "What request?" Qin Feiyang asked. "In the future, you can only give me the four symbols infinite divine pellet. In other words, except for me, no one else is allowed to give it to you, especially the higher-ups of Nine Heavens Palace," Shangguan Qiu said. "Of course." Qin Feiyang nodded. "All right, I'll immediately contact the treasure pavilions in East Hill, West Desert, and South Wilderness to prepare the herbs. I'll send you a message when the time comes," Shangguan Qiu said. Qin Feiyang said in surprise. You can directly contact the treasure pavilions in East Hill, West Desert, and South Wilderness? Of course. Not only Nine Heavens Palace, but the treasure pavilion also has a teleportation altar that can directly teleport you there, Shang Guanqiu said. I see. Qin Feiyang suddenly understood. After thinking for a while, he said, I need a few more herbs. Help me prepare them. Shang Guanqiu was stunned. His eyes lit up as he asked, Are you going to research some new elixir? A new elixir? How can it be so easy to research it? Qin Feiyang was speechless. Shang Guanqiu smiled embarrassedly and said, Then what do you need? Qin Feiyang said, The dragon god's flower, the primordial spirit lotus, and the dragon soul. What? The dragon soul? Shang Guanqiu was shocked. Yes, the divine soul of a dragon. Remember, it must be a real divine dragon. In addition, its cultivation must be at least a perfected god of war, Qin Feiyang said. A perfected god of war divine dragon. Shang Guanqiu was stunned. There were very few divine dragons in this world. Even if they could find one, no one would be willing to kill it. Of course, I'm not asking for it for free. I'll buy it from you according to the market price. Qin Feiyang said, It's not about whether it's for free or not. The primordial spirit lotus and the flower of the dragon god are fine, but the dragon soul. Shang Guanqiu furrowed his beautiful brows and hesitated. Qin Feiyang said with a smile, I believe the treasure pavilion has the ability to do so. I can't promise you this now. I'll have to ask my master and the deputy pavilion master first. Shang Guanqiu pondered for a while and looked at Qin Feiyang. Okay. Qin Feiyang nodded. Shang Guanqiu said, Then I'll go and prepare the herbs for the four symbols infinite divine pill. Okay. Qin Feiyang said, Okay, wait for my news. After Shang Guanqiu finished speaking, the virtual image quickly disappeared. Mu Qing also put away the image crystal. Mu Tianyang laughed and said, We'll split it 50-50. We'll make a lot of money this time. Qin Feiyang smiled and lowered his head. He pondered for a while and said, If only the demon ancestor was here. Why do you say that? Mu Tianyang was suspicious. If he's here, then I can find a chance to kill the demonic dragon beside him. Qin Feiyang said. Mu Tianyang and Mu Qing looked at each other. This guy was indeed ruthless. Fortunately, the demon ancestor and the demonic dragon were not here. Otherwise, they would be so angry that smoke would come out of their nostrils. Qin Feiyang shook his head regretfully and said to Mu Tianyang and Mu Qing, I've given you the elixirs. You can go back first. Mu Tianyang smiled and said, About going to the castle to cultivate. There's no room for discussion. Qin Feiyang directly interrupted Mu Tianyang. Mu Tianyang could not help but be disappointed. He sighed and said, It seems that we can only stay in the Crimson Gold Divine Pagoda for a while. Although the rule of time in the Crimson Gold Divine Pagoda was not as good as the castle, it was better than nothing. Qin Feiyang asked, So, you're going to challenge the people on the Earth Roll? What else? I wanted to challenge the people on the Heaven Roll and make a lot of money. But according to my investigation, the people on the Heaven Roll are all too strong. I'm not sure. If you're willing to let me go to the castle, it won't be so troublesome. Mu Tianyang said helplessly. Qin Feiyang said, What about the resource hall? Don't forget, we agreed that we would enter the resource hall together. These are two unrelated things. If we go to the resource hall, we'll only go there to work. Normally, we'll still be in our own cave abode. Mu Tianyang said, I see. I thought that after entering the resource hall, the cave abode would be arranged in the resource hall. Qin Feiyang said, There are no cave abodes in the resource hall. Forget it, I won't beg you. There's no time like the present. I'll challenge the number one person on the Earth Roll now and take down the 10th floor of the Crimson Gold Divine Pagoda. Mu Tianyang sneered, his entire body exuding a sense of confidence. Qin Feiyang did not doubt this point. With Mu Tianyang's methods, not to mention that he had broken through to the perfect war god realm, even when he was still a perfect war god realm, he was enough to shake the disciples on the Earth Roll. No, it was not shaking. It was crushing. Mu Tianyang had this strength. How about it? Do you want to take a gamble? Mu Tianyang encouraged. Take a gamble? If you challenge a disciple on the heaven roll, then Feng Yuan might let Jin Fatso go to the battlefield to take a gamble. But if it's someone on the earth roll, that's a business that's guaranteed to lose. Why would Feng Yuan do it? Moreover, Feng Zijuan's life and death are unknown. Feng Yuan is not in the mood. Today's gamble is definitely not going to happen. Qin Feiyang shook his head and said. Then, he brought Mu Tianyang and appeared in the alchemy room. After Mu Tianyang and his companion left, Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. He kept the nether devil flame and the azure phoenix cauldron into the ancient castle. Then, he entered the black tortoise world and descended in the sky above the desert. Below, Feng Zijuan was like a dead dog, lying in the boundary on the verge of death. But when he saw Qin Feiyang, he immediately shuddered and quickly got up. Zhang Haoyin, why are you here? That was because Qin Feiyang had not changed his appearance yet. So, when he saw Qin Feiyang appear here, he was very surprised. He did not know that the person who kidnapped him was Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang smiled playfully and looked at Feng Zijuan in surprise. Isn't this senior brother Feng Zijuan? It's me. Feng Zijuan nodded. What's going on with you? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. It's a long story. Junior brother Jiang, quickly save me. I'll give you 100 million spirit stones. No, I'll give you 1 billion. Feng Zijuan not only did not realize that the person who kidnapped him was Qin Feiyang, but instead looked as if he had seen a life-saving straw. His face was full of pleading. 1 billion spirit stones? Qin Feiyang was stunned and said with a smile, This is really attractive, but I may not be able to open this boundary. I believe you can open it. Feng Zijuan said anxiously. Okay, I'll try. Qin Feiyang nodded, stepped in front of the boundary, and punched the boundary. However, the barrier didn't even tremble. Use more strength. Feng Zijuan urged. Don't worry. Qin Feiyang hurriedly comforted him. Divine power rolled out, and he punched the boundary again. But there was still no movement. It's over. It's completely over. Feng Zijuan collapsed on the ground. Looking at Feng Zijuan's desperate expression, Qin Feiyang couldn't help but want to laugh. But he still wanted to tease him for a while. So he held back his laughter and asked suspiciously, Senior brother, did you offend someone? Chapter 2071. I don't know either. During this period of time, it seems that except for you, I haven't offended anyone? Feng Zijuan shook his head and said. Qin Feiyang said, Then why are you imprisoned here? I really don't know. At that time, I was cultivating in the cave when 2 people suddenly appeared. Not only did they destroy my sea of qi, but they also locked me up here. I don't know where the hell is this place? I can't get any help from the heavens and earth. Feng Zijuan said in despair. Qin Feiyang glanced around and said, This place seems to be a space divine object. I think so too. How about this? You help me inform my grandfather. My grandfather will definitely have a way. Feng Zijuan looked at Qin Feiyang and said. Qin Feiyang said helplessly, This is a space divine object. I can't get out. That's true. Feng Zijuan lowered his head, looking depressed. Wait. He suddenly realized that something was wrong. Since this was a space divine object, then how did this person come in? Suddenly, he looked up and stared at Qin Feiyang, his face full of surprise. What's wrong? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Feng Zijuan said in a deep voice, Why are you here? Are you an accomplice of the 2 kidnappers? Accomplice? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Everyone knows that if you want to enter a space divine object, you have to get the permission of the owner. Now that you're here, if you're not their accomplice, then what are you? Feng Zijuan said angrily. Qin Feiyang smiled helplessly, looked at Feng Zijuan and said, I'm really not an accomplice. I'm the mastermind, because I kidnapped you. What? Feng Zijuan suddenly stood up. I thought you could think of this, but I seem to have overestimated your IQ. You actually asked me for help? Qin Feiyang could no longer hold back and laughed. In this situation, anyone with a little brain would think that the other party might be the one who kidnapped him. And this person asked him for help at the first moment. This IQ was really touching. You're the mastermind? Are you the one who kidnapped me? But I saw the two people who kidnapped me with my own eyes. It wasn't you? Feng Zijuan said in disbelief. Qin Feiyang looked at the sky speechlessly and said, "Could it be that you don't know that there is something called the illusory form pill in this world?" When Feng Zijun heard this, his body began to tremble. His face was filled with fear. "What do you want to do? What do you think I want to do?" Qin Feiyang smiled. Plop. As soon as Qin Feiyang's voice fell, Feng Zijuan knelt on the ground and begged, "Junior Marshal Brother Jiang, I was wrong in the past. Please be magnanimous and don't argue with me, okay? I'll apologize to you and kowtow to you. As long as you let me go, I'll give you a huge sum of compensation." Qin Feiyang asked curiously, "Then tell me, how much is the compensation?" "I'll give you whatever you want. I'll give you as much as you want. And I swear that I won't play any tricks. Just do me a favor and let me go. In the future, I'll never find trouble with you again. Even if I see you, I'll immediately take a detour." Feng Zijuan said, "Give me whatever I want." Qin Feiyang murmured and said with a smile, "This condition is really tempting, but unfortunately, I've already revealed my true identity. If he really let Feng Zijuan go now, the Great Elder and Shangguan Fenglan would directly kill him without Feng Yuan's help. Because he kidnapped Feng Zijuan in the Jiutian Palace, this was a huge crime. Even if Shangguan Fenglan and the Great Elder wanted to use him to deal with Feng Yuan, they wouldn't dare to absolve him. It's okay. I won't tell others that you kidnapped me, including my grandfather and the others. Please believe me." Feng Zijuan looked at Qin Feiyang pleadingly. "Believe you?" Qin Feiyang sneered and stepped into the barrier. "You should be hiding a divine artifact in your body, right? You." Feng Zijuan's face turned pale. "There really is," Qin Feiyang muttered. Although Feng Zijuan didn't say it clearly, his current reaction was enough to explain everything. Qin Feiyang released his spiritual will and poured it into Feng Zijuan's body. Soon, a hint of surprise flashed across his eyes. In Feng Zijuan's qi, there were actually two divine artifacts floating, a 3-foot-long sword and a white armor. And judging from the aura, it was a peak-level divine artifact. Not bad, not bad. 2 peak-level divine artifact, Qin Feiyang said with a smile, and then changed the topic. With a shocking sharpness, he shouted, "Come out immediately, or I will destroy your body and destroy your soul." A peak-level divine artifact had already given birth to a spirit, and for a divine artifact of this level, the intelligence of the spirit was no less than that of a human. So no matter who said it, they could understand. Not long after Qin Feiyang's voice fell, 2 divine artifacts flew out from Feng Zijuan's qi. "Very good." Qin Feiyang nodded and smiled. Seeing this, Feng Zijuan hurriedly said, "Junior Brother Jiang, let me go. I will give you these 2 divine artifacts. Do I still need you to give it to me now?" Qin Feiyang's face was full of disdain. He left the enchantment and took out the image crystal. Buzz. Not long after, a shadow appeared. "Big Brother Jiang." This shadow was Gongzi Feng. Looking at Gongzi Feng's shadow, Feng Zijuan's face was full of disbelief. How was this Gongzi Feng related to Jiang Haoyin? And from the way Gongzi Feng addressed Jiang Haoyin and the expression he showed, it seemed that they were not familiar with each other. Qin Feiyang said, "Come over now." "Now? Didn't you say at night?" Gongzi Feng said. Because his back was facing Feng Zijuan, Gongzi Feng didn't know that Feng Zijuan was here. "Now. But be careful, don't be followed," Qin Feiyang said. "Okay, I'll be right there." Gongzi Feng nodded. After turning off the image crystal, he immediately disguised himself and flew towards the first sacred peak. Feng Zijuan also finally came back to his senses, staring at Qin Feiyang and asked, "What is your relationship with my brother?" "He is your brother?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. Feng Zijuan said angrily, "Nonsense. The entire 9 Heavens Palace knows that he is my brother." Qin Feiyang said, "But they don't know that Gongzi Feng is not your biological brother." "What?" Feng Zijuan looked at Qin Feiyang dumbfounded. Qin Feiyang said, "Do you want to ask why I know so much?" Feng Zijuan nodded instinctively. Qin Feiyang said indifferently, "Of course, Gongzi Feng must have told me." Feng Zijuan roared. He even told you this. What is your relationship? My relationship with him. Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and said, I don't know yet. It depends on his choice. Choice? Feng Zijuan frowned. Qin Feiyang didn't say anything more and appeared in the cave. A moment later, dong, there was a knock on the door. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the cave's stone door opened, and an ordinary-looking young man in black walked in quickly. It was Gongzi Feng. After the cave's stone door closed, he took a facial restoration pill and restored his original appearance. Qin Feiyang stepped forward and said indifferently, I'll take you to see someone. Who? Gongzi Feng was suspicious. Qin Feiyang didn't answer. He brought Gongzi Feng and directly descended in front of the barrier. When he saw Feng Zijuan inside the barrier, Gongzi Feng's expression suddenly changed. Qin Feiyang said, Yes, the one who kidnapped him is me. Gongzi Feng was stunned, and when he came back to his senses, he looked at Qin Feiyang and said, Are you crazy? You actually kidnapped him in Jiutian Palace. Do you know how big of an impact this matter will have on you? Also, why did you bring me to see him? Now that he sees us together, won't he know our relationship? He might even mistakenly think that I'm your accomplice. At that time, Feng Yuan and Feng Wenhai will definitely not let me go. Gongzi Feng was burning with anxiety. Qin Feiyang said indifferently, As long as you're willing, no one will know that he was kidnapped by me, and it won't implicate you. As long as I'm willing? Gongzi Feng frowned, his face full of suspicion. Qin Feiyang said, It seems that your ability to understand is still not good enough. I'll make it clear. As long as you kill him now, kill him. Without waiting for Qin Feiyang to finish, Gongzi Feng's body suddenly trembled. There was no need for Qin Feiyang to say it, he understood. Don't you hate him? Didn't this person often bully you in the past? Now that the opportunity is in front of you, what are you hesitating for? Qin Feiyang said. But Gongzi Feng hesitated. Third brother, you have to think carefully. Although we don't have the same mother, we're still born from the same father. The same blood flows in our bodies. I'm your biological big brother. You can't be instigated by him. Feng Zijuan finally understood Qin Feiyang's intention and hurriedly looked at Gongzi Feng and called out. Gongzi Feng looked at Feng Zijuan as if it was difficult for him to make a decision. Of course, I won't force you. If you don't kill him, I can let you and your brother go. But you have to keep the kidnapping a secret, Qin Feiyang said indifferently. Hearing this, Feng Zijuan's eyes lit up, and he hurriedly said, Third brother, quickly tell him that you don't want to kill me, and we can leave. Gongzi Feng stuttered, his face full of struggle. Third brother. In the past, big sister, grandpa, father, mother, and I were prejudiced against you. But now I've reflected on it. I promise you that we'll be a family in the future, and I'll treat you like my own younger brother. Haven't you always wanted to give your mother a status? When we go back, I'll immediately persuade Grandpa to give your mother a status, and let her bones be buried in our Feng family cemetery. Feng Zijuan said. Gongzi Feng's eyes trembled, and he asked, Really? I'm not lying to you, really? Feng Zijuan nodded. Gongzi Feng turned to look at Qin Feiyang and asked, Big brother Jiang, what do you think I should do? Decide for yourself. Qin Feiyang's face was indifferent, as if it had nothing to do with him. Gongzi Feng looked at Feng Zijuan again. Feng Zijuan was anxious, and he said, Third brother, don't be foolish. Feng family. Gongzi Feng clenched his fists, and the scenes of the past kept appearing in his mind, and a hint of anger gradually appeared between his brows. Chapter 2072. Seeing the change in Gongzi Feng's expression, Feng Zijuan could not help but panic. He had never taken Gongzi Feng seriously in the past. Gongzi Feng even used to bully him. However, he never thought his life and death would end up in Gongzi Feng's hands one day. Third brother, we're family. Feng Zijuan blurted out anxiously. Shut up. Gongzi Feng roared furiously. He stared at Feng Zijuan with a ferocious expression and said, Ask yourself, have you ever treated me as your family? Feng Zijuan panicked even more. He said, It's all in the past. Why are you still holding on to it? I swear I'll treat you as my younger brother. It's all in the past. No, it's not all in the past. You can let it go, but I can't let it go, let alone forget it. Even now, I still remember the despair and pain my mother felt before she died, and it's all because of Feng Wenhai and the Feng clan. The sins you've committed will never be forgiven. Gongzi Feng roared. His body was filled with resentment while his eyes were filled with murderous intent. Feng Zijuan's body trembled. His face turned pale. What could he do to escape this calamity? Grandfather, father, mother, sister, come and save me, quick. Gongzi Feng turned to Qin Feiyang and said murderously, Brother Jiang, let me in. As you wish. Qin Feiyang smiled and waved his hand. The barrier formed by the force of the rules of order immediately turned into chains that shot forward like poisonous snakes. They firmly bound Feng Zijuan's limbs, preventing him from moving. Gongzi Feng glanced at Feng Zijuan. Initially, I still had some hope for Feng Wenhai and the rest of you. After all, you're my family. That's why I pleaded for leniency for Feng Wenhai in the square and asked Big Brother Jiang to let him go. I thought it would move you, but in the end, I realized how wrong I was. I just want to ask you, is it wrong for me to clear my mother's name? I only have a small wish. Why can't you fulfill it? You people are simply too cold-blooded. I'm thoroughly disappointed in all of you. Don't worry, you won't be lonely on the road to the Yellow Springs because soon, Feng Wenhai and the others will accompany you. Gongzi Feng sneered as he walked towards Feng Zijuan. His eyes were bloodshot, and he looked like a mad beast. No, third brother. These matters can all be discussed. We were wrong in the past. We didn't consider your feelings. Feng Zijun shook his head in panic, feeling extremely desperate. It's too late. It's too late. I've had enough of these years of humiliation. Gongzi Feng slowly shook his head and walked in front of Feng Zijuan. With a clanging sound, a dagger appeared, flickering with a cold light. No, I beg you, Feng Zijuan roared. Go down and accompany my mother in death. Gongzi Feng smiled sinisterly. He raised his dagger and stabbed it into Feng Zijuan's head. Ah, a shrill scream resounded in the air above the desert. Feng Zijun's eyes widened in anger as he stared at Gongzi Feng with resentment and roared. You and Jiang Haoyan will both die a horrible death. Following that, Feng Zijun's head tilted and he died on the spot. However, Gongzi Feng also collapsed on the ground powerlessly. Looking at the blood-stained dagger in his hand, there was a trace of disbelief in his eyes. He actually killed Feng Zijun? It felt like a dream. Do you know? At this time, Qin Feiyang, who had been watching coldly from the sidelines, slowly walked behind Gongzi Feng and said indifferently, Once, I also did this kind of thing, and I killed more than one. My father's sons were almost all killed by me. Killed all? Gongzi Feng looked at Qin Feiyang in shock and asked, After killing them, weren't you afraid? Afraid? No. At that time, there was only joy in my heart. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Joy? Gongzi Feng muttered. Am I showing off? There is nothing to show off about brothers killing each other. I just want to tell you that since you have already made a move, then you must have the courage to face the other side, Qin Feiyang said. Thank you. Gongzi Feng said gratefully and stood up. He lowered his head and looked at Feng Zijun's corpse. There was no longer any fear in his eyes. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and said, Actually, your choice saved your life. What do you mean? Gongzi Feng was stunned and looked at Qin Feiyang in puzzlement. Slowly understand it yourself. Qin Feiyang smiled and controlled the Black Tortoise realm. He quietly left the cave and flew toward the inner sect Deacon Hall. Gongzi Feng lowered his head and carefully pondered Qin Feiyang's words. Suddenly, his gaze trembled as he raised his head and stared at Qin Feiyang. There was a trace of unconcealable fear in his eyes. He finally understood. This time, it was actually a test. If he killed Feng Zijun with his own hands, then this person would always help him in the future. But if he chose to plead for Feng Zijun, then this person would kill him and Feng Zijun together. Thinking of this, Gongzi Feng couldn't help but break out in cold sweat. Fortunately, he wasn't soft-hearted just now. Otherwise, he would definitely be a corpse now. After a while, the black tortoise realm flew above the inner sect Deacon Hall. Qin Feiyang observed for a while. He only saw Jin Yunchang in the Deacon Hall and didn't see Frenzy. Then, he directly threw Feng Zijun's corpse on the square of the Deacon Hall. Jin Yunchang, who was sitting in the Deacon Hall, heard the commotion outside and raised his head suspiciously and looked outside. Is it Zijun? When he saw a corpse on the square, his expression suddenly became suspicious and he hurriedly ran out. It's really Zijun. Damn it! Who is it? His divine sense rolled out and covered all directions. But in the void, he couldn't find anything. Because Qin Feiyang had already left with the black tortoise realm. Min, Jin Yunchang roared. The first to rush over were the inner sect disciples below the Deacon Hall. What? Feng Zijun was actually killed? Who on earth is so daring to not only kidnap Feng Zijun, but also kill him and even deliberately send the corpse in front of Jin Yunchang? As more and more disciples came, the place became noisier. Everyone's heart was filled with disbelief. It was one thing to not destroy the corpse after killing someone, but to deliberately send it here. Wasn't this a clear provocation to the Feng family? What a terrifying method. What terrifying courage. Zijun soon, accompanied by a roar, Feng Yuan and Feng Zihan landed on the square with a murderous aura. Looking at Feng Zijun's corpse, their faces were full of pain. Tell me, who is it? Feng Yuan suddenly landed in front of Jin Yunchang and grabbed his clothes. His eyes were bloodshot as he roared. I don't know. Jin Yunchang shook his head. Trash. Feng Yuan directly slapped Jin Yunchang's face. Jin Yunchang was sent flying on the spot, spitting blood from his mouth. His teeth were all broken, but he did not dare to complain. Swish. Suddenly, another figure landed on the square. It was Lunatic. Looking at Feng Zijun's corpse, Lunatic immediately frowned slightly. Feng Zihan shouted, Lunatic, what are you doing as an inner sect elder? Someone committed murder in the inner sect, and you don't even know. Lunatic said angrily, Bitch, don't bite me. Let me tell you, this matter is not over. As an inner sect elder, you can't escape the blame for not protecting your disciples. Feng Zihan snorted coldly. If you had informed me at the first moment, I would indeed be responsible for Feng Zijun's death. But you didn't do so, so it has nothing to do with me. Hurry up and get the corpse away. Don't dirty my territory. Lunatic said with a face of disdain. Hearing Lunatic's words, Feng Yuan was furious and roared, Little bastard, you've gone too far. Bang. Immediately after, he took a step forward and slapped Lunatic with his palm. Swish. But at the same time, Shangguan Fenglan appeared in front of Lunatic out of thin air, raised her slender hand and slapped. Boom. Feng Yuan was forced back a few steps on the spot. Shangguan Fenglan's face was also slightly pale. Obviously, the strength of the two was about the same. Feng Yuan, I can understand your current mood, but what Lunatic said makes sense. After all, you didn't inform us at the first moment, so we didn't have time to investigate. Shangguan Fenglan looked at Feng Yuan and said expressionlessly, Yes, it's our fault for not informing you in time. What about now? When can you find out the real murderer for me? If you can't find out, you don't deserve to be an inner sect elder and the law enforcement hall master. Feng Yuan shouted. It's not up to you to decide whether we deserve it or not. Get the corpse away. As for the real murderer, we will try our best to investigate. Shangguan Fenglan said indifferently. Not try your best, but you must find out, otherwise I won't let you off. Zihan, let's go. Feng Yuan stared at Shangguan Fenglan and said gloomily. Then he shouted coldly at Feng Zihan and turned to leave angrily. Feng Zihan picked up Feng Zijun's corpse, glanced at Lunatic who was standing aside as if it had nothing to do with him, and also turned to leave. This is going to be a big mess. Yes. Feng Yuan's most beloved grandson is Feng Zijun. If the real murderer can't be found, there will be no end to it. The surrounding disciples were whispering, What's there to see? Get lost. Lunatic glanced around and suddenly shouted. The group of disciples' faces changed, and they immediately dispersed. Jin Yunchang. Lunatic looked at Jin Yunchang again. Elder. Jin Yunchang looked at Lunatic with fear and trepidation. Others have sent the corpse here openly, but you still haven't seen the murderer. Tell me, what's the use of keeping you? Lunatic said. Jin Yunchang looked aggrieved. What did this have to do with him? Feng Yuan was mad at him, and Lunatic was also questioning him. How could he be so wronged? What are you waiting for? Why aren't you going to investigate for me? Everyone in Jiutian Palace, including the disciples on the Heaven List and Earth List, interrogate them for me. If anyone doesn't cooperate, kill them without mercy. Lunatic shouted. Yes. Jin Yunchang responded and hurriedly turned to leave. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.